Just for the benefit of those that have just joined, I would like to welcome you to today's Outformation seminar, which will start shortly with Nababkak Nihes. Thank you for joining, and we'll be starting shortly.
Thank you, Orem Heb. Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that. Tell Zach. Are you happy to retain as the host? Yeah. So I'll just concentrate. Can you hear me? Okay.
Fine. I can.
Yeah, happy to retain as the host.
Yeah, I'm quite happy. Yeah.
Okay, Manthu, you ready as well?
I'm ready.
Okay.
Ready and waiting.
Okay.
Can I just say there's one attendee with his hand up. If the person got the hand up to like to press or click that button again to take the hand down, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, well, here's a question. We can lower the person's hand for them, I think. Options. Okay, let's get started. Okay, we're going to do something I think we need to do it from now on, but in respect of the classes going forward, I think we need to start in the right kind of cultural way. I was influenced by a sister I saw teaching class, so maybe that's a good way to start. So I'm going to start with something called Ba'h Yaanuwn. It's the affirmation. So I'm going to read it in the Sabaic language in the first instance, then I'll translate it into English. And it's just basically an affirmation affirming our oneness, yeah, as a people. Abdoi Kalel Namazwat Wu Fakur Ama Kasam Afaf Empa Faut Anuki Jawef Pa Ashuk Empa Faut Wu Kale Ashuk Kawun Jawef Neya Anuki Kasam Empa Faut Wu Pa Faut Kawun Kasam Emneya Anuki Wahu Ameh Pa Faut Wu Pa Faut Kawun Wahu Ameh Neya Nakuk Kado Najo Ameh Kasam Empa Faut Wu Habub Ameh Mushahus Nakuk Kadur Kawan Kale Pafaf Nakuk Dayur Jawef Pa Faut Ame Wase Ame Dayarni Kawun Lakay Bakoe Jawef Pa Faut Anuki Abed Bi Nafashni Pa Faut Kawun Anuki Pa Faut Kadur Nakuk Kadur Pa Faut Amul Nakuk Amul. That is Ba'h Yaanuwn, the affirmation. Ba'h Yaanuwn, the affirmation, and it says, I am in the divine love of the all expanding, and all divine love is in me. I am part of the all expanding, and the all expanding is a part of me. I am one as the all expanding, and the all expanding is one as me. I can succeed as part of the all expanding and fail as an individual person. I can be all that I want in the all expanding as long as my want is to stay in the all expanding. I am never by myself. The all expanding is, I am. The all expanding can, I can. The all expanding does, I do. Well, welcome everybody to another Outformation class today. We got two classes this month, so usually we have part 1 and part 2, but we're doing 2 classes this month just to cover off a few issues before we get into the next class, which I think is on the 17th of May, if my memory serves me correctly, which is dealing with the breath, hidden science of the breath. So that's on the 17th. So if you've not registered for that, please do so. The part 1s and 2s are separate, but once you register once, you don't have to register again. Okay, so today we're talking about the rebirth of Black Egypt and the Matriarch Revisited. So this was a class that was done last year. So we're going to place a bit of a different emphasis on what we've done last year with this class. So I'm doing a bit more reading today than I usually do, just to walk through certain concepts. If there is anything, as I say, you do not understand or you've got questions, there are 2 ways to answer questions in this webinar. One is via the question and answer written chat. So basically, you put your question in, and then at certain points, I will stop the class to say and take questions on the subject that we're dealing with. We've got a lot to get through, so if the questions can be focused on the topic that we're dealing with. If it is a question which is not on the topic and it's worth dealing with, then I may sidetrack because we've got a lot to get through today. Questions focus on the subject at hand. And the other way is that you can put your hand up, you can raise your hand, and then you can come on and ask your question verbally. So those are the two ways to ask questions. Don't be shy. I don't buy it. Certainly don't buy it through a computer screen. So, as I say, we're all family on the call, so no need to feel embarrassed or anything of that nature. No question is too simple or whatever to be asked. Yeah, it's about clarification in this regard. Okay, so some basics or housekeeping. So, Rebirth of Black Egypt and the Matriarch, Revisited is the title. You've got some, which I'll go back at the end of the class to do that. So that's our UK website, and that is the, I suppose, worldwide website, and that's where you can get us locally on Facebook. So let's talk a little bit about an introduction, as I say, who the master teacher is and who we are as an organisation. So I'll spend a little bit of time on that in detail in some previous parts. So at the end, I'll give you the details of our YouTube page so you can see previous classes. I don't cover certain things in a lot of detail for today. So who is the master teacher? Well, who we call the master teacher, and he's the master teacher to us based on his qualifications, but don't believe us. Obviously, check out the work, check out the classes, etc., and make your own determination. The reason why I say master teacher, because he's a master at teaching. And so when we talk through what our people, the Nagaru, African people, have been through, certainly over the last 6,000 years, as we covered in part 1 and 2 of his story, and certainly more recently in what is fakely called the transatlantic slave trade, although nothing was traded in the last 400 years. We've been through a significant number of problems and issues and been under a significant attack, particularly from the Caucasoid or Mukasu or the Caucasians. And as we talked in the last part, who are their overlords, deities, extraterrestrials we're covering here, called the Anunnaki, and their jealousy of our divine genes and divine link to our own ancestors has caused us to be under their rule, so to speak, for the last 6,000 years, as their God gave them dominion over the earth, as it was talked about in Genesis chapter, in the first chapter in Genesis. They were given rule over the fish of the sea, so on and so forth. So this is what we've been dealing with. And so our ancestors, as we just alluded to in the Partak Yod, we're never left alone. And so periodically, teachers have been sent to raise our consciousness up, to transform us or bring us back to our original way of life, according to natural nature and the universe that we preside in, and there are many of those within existence. So Dr. Malachi Z Kwabena York Okran, born in Ghana, Takoradi in Ghana, West Africa, in 1945, June 26, and is the son of Mary Ba'h B'ah York, Fatima, and we're talking about matriarch today, so we can't underestimate, the importance of those sacred feminine, Vanas, Tasu, who basically birth great teachers and leaders, and that is the way of life according to natural nature, not according to what somebody wrote down in a book where they say that woman came from the rib of a man. Understood? That may be true according to their fictional stories, but it's not the reality of who we are. And it certainly wasn't the reality of our story, the way we recorded things back in ancient Africa, ancient Egypt, which we will prove beyond a shadow of a doubt today, and how that has been hidden from the masses and ourselves, not only through spell casting, but still remains an issue today, where that which created us is still being referred to as he, him, so on and so forth. And this needs to be, the record needs to be set straight. So we certainly give respect and honor and praise to our Salafu, our ancestor. She's crossed over to the other side. Mary Abba Akran-York, known as Fatima Maryam. She was of the Iwe tribe in the West African tribe, the Akan tribes in Ghana. His father, Al-Hafti Abdul Rahman Al-Said, so is of the royal family of Sudan. As you see, they're birthed in 1922. And is of the Said family, linked and is the grandson of the Mahdi. Not to underestimate Al-Hadi Abdul Rahman al-Mahdi's achievements as part of the royal family. Unfortunately, he was assassinated in 1970, but ties the master teacher into a very famous bloodline from the Sudanese side of the family, and is linked to Muhammad Ahmad al-Mahdi. As you can see, they're born 1845 to 1885 and is known as the Mahdi. Do some research, look him up. I'm not going to go into too much detail today. I've done it in previous classes. The reason why he's not well known in history, as I say, is because you look at the colour of his skin, his freckles are too close. And unfortunately, the monotheistic religions today have racism at its core. And if you remember in Genesis chapter 3, verse 15, it was the God of their Bible, who is the God of the Quran, which is linked or a copy of the Bible. Let's not get it mistaken, it's a copy. The New Testament is a copy of the Torah, or the Christians have copied the Jews. Judaism and Christianity or Islam is a copy of Christianity, understood? And their God in Genesis 3, verse 15, said he put enmity between what they called serpent seed and the Eve seed. So at that point, if the story be true, which we say it's not, or it's the Mukasu, his story, it's the history of how the Caucasian or white race came around, that is where racism, hatred, sexism, all these things started from that point, from that enmity or hatred as it's translated between those two parties, understood? So here we have special people, so on and so forth, chosen ones, etc. All religious fighting, etc., and different things of that nature has come from the doctrine, understood, that we see in the books, as I say, called the Torah, the Bible, and the Quran today. And that sounds harsh in this day and time, but as you can see with the things that are going on in the world, all false things must perish and the truth must be uncovered as actual facts in this day and time. Now, this is Master Teacher, age 25, and known at that time as Isa al-Hadi al-Mahdi, say known today as, spiritually at least, as they see in his teacher, was Ba'h B'ah Yaanuwn, today, or Ba'h B'ah Yaanuwn. Today, I'm going to be referring to him as the Master Teacher affectionately, and I'm a student teacher of the Master Teacher. My name is Nabab Kakli Hess, and sometimes we will say we, and that is a reflection of me acknowledging the fact that as teachers or student teachers, we were given birth to, at least spiritually, by the master teacher in order to convey this information to you. And it also is acknowledgement of all the student teachers across the world, because we obviously act as a group here as the Madrasu Tashrak world over. Now, in our culture, in ancient Egypt, which we're going to talk about a little bit today, we talk about a character, or say character or position, I should say, maybe a better way to describe it, referred to as the Amun Nabab Raye Ahabta. Excuse me. My water alarm going off there. Very unprofessional. Okay, so the Amun Nabab Raye Ahabta, and this position comes every 24,000 years. Yeah, at the end of the cycle. Get a little bit into cycles today, not too much. If people got questions on it, please feel free to ask. So at the end of the cycle, basically, our story has to be renewed. So as opposed to his story, which is based on a 6,000-year history, our story at certain points, we've been around for so long, and obviously we are in an ignorant state currently, our story has to be renewed. So a vehicle, or Amanubira Akatar describes a vehicle or a vessel which our ancestors used to obviously house that being in order to convey certain information that we need to transform us, as I say, from mortals back to deities again, or back to our rightful state and position according to the rules of natural nature. Understood? Now, that is called different things in different cultures. So in, I think, the Hindu religion is referred to as an avatar. In Islam, they refer to it as an Ilah Mutajasid. In Christianity, it's referred to as Emmanuel. So various different titles describing this process or concept, as I say, of where our ancestors use a being who has access to past information to take control of our present, so we can take control, obviously, of our future. Yeah, with this new information, take control or change our destiny, which we're heading on a path at the moment of self-destruction as opposed to self-preservation. Yeah, if we carry on the way we are going now, we're on a path to destroy ourselves, and there are, trust me, many parties out there that are helping us on our way to do that. But natural nature, us being the sons and daughters of Reye and Reye Tat, yeah, the children of the sun, must be here. We are part of the solar system. We are part of the universe. And as you start to see, as we step through this class today, that is all part of our divine, I use that word loosely, plan that we are a part of as natural nature. When we talk about Parfa'ut, or the all expanding, we are referring to existence, primarily existence. All is. You cannot take away from all, you cannot add to it, because where would you get it from? Yes, that's all things existing everywhere in all places. Existence, we're a part of it. Yeah, and so, you know, even though I'm speaking to you on the call, and we are in many different places around the world today, if you look from a quantum physics point of view, there's no real space between us. That is what it's acknowledging. We're going back to that original blackness. Yeah, the fake teachings today have you worshipping the light. And that light is really fire. Yeah, but when you look up in the so-called night sky, as they refer to as, which is no real state, night means the absence of light. Looking up in Old English, there's no state. We're in night, we're in the earth, it's in a state of shadow. And these are the type of corrections that the master teacher, housed by the being known as Yaanuwn, who we're looking at on the screen at the moment, has been conveying that information from 1963 all the way up to today. Yeah, over 1,000 books. I'm probably sitting on 300 myself. Do you understand? Overwhelmed with information in this day and time. New stuff, corrective stuff for us in this day and time. 360 degrees of earthly information, 360 degrees of esoteric information. And it's one of the reasons today why people like yourself and various different students are now starting to be able to look at certain things, have been given back a language again to express ourselves, and starting to understand the Safuf, yeah, which is now in fact upgraded. It's Safaf, which the Greeks called hieroglyphs, which, as we've shown many times before, explains the name of the person who he is. So the person's telling you who they are in terms of their job title. Whether that person is that job, that is for you to determine by testing it out. If someone says they're an electrician, well, you're not going to know they're an electrician until you give them some work to do, and they do it to a state of competency. We say, yes, that person is competent at what they do, and in terms of that skill, etc. And therefore, I consider them to be what they are claiming. In this particular instance, they're Master Yaanuwn of heaven and earth, and say we see the patat symbol here, which we've explained before, but with a star in the middle. This is symbolic of the female deity Nut or Natat. We see the Palel, the stool, that gives us that pa sound. So here in one of our scripts, it's saying here pa nabab ya Nun here. Yeah, that's in our script for those who can read the what I've been in the Wapic scripts now, Sabaic. And here, this is a term for Nabab or master. This is a 2 reeds, yeah, and that gives you a ya sound. We see the nun bowls here, which talk about a lot today in class. So that gives that new sound, and then so those who are probably already answering this question as I speak, so I heard me say it so many times before, this gives us a n sound, yeah. So horizontal lines in this fashion is dealing with naturally occurring water, for those who have not joined us before on class, and the blue colour symbolises the blue Nile, and this is a symbol for earth. Yeah, so we see in the hieroglyphs that we're giving our story, and this is a cartouche which is designed to protect the tone, as I say, which we refer to as name. We protect that natural tone, so that, as I say, we are protected by that spiritually within natural nature. So, moving on, I spend a little bit less time on the introduction today because there's so much to get through in today's class, and we're trying to stick to the time allotted. So we have gone through, let's say, various different schools of thought, teachings, etc. And part of that has been designed to really uncover something referred to as the spell. Yeah, it was a hypnotic spell that was cast on our people by the sons and daughters of what they refer to as the 200 fallen angels in the book of Enoch, in the Bible. I think it's Genesis chapter 6, which they record or copied a version of that story from the Sumerian tablets, where those 200 fallen angels referred to as the Ikiki mixed in with the Adamite women. So Caucasian women at that time overstood and taught them certain what would be referred to as Wicca style teachings, and part of that obviously has helped to formulate a spell which has been cast upon our people today, which I can't remember, or our connection or link to the many great things that we did in our story, and now that's been constrained to his story, coupled with a number of other things. So we have to remember or react to the fact that we are under a spiritual spell, as well as obviously a number of various different physical attacks upon our race. Yeah, but obviously that spell attacks the mind. And so if the mind is not right, then the physical cannot be right. So in the cycles of nature, where we're coming back into the renewal of our story, the mind has to be addressed first. Yeah, so this is why we have been brain dirtied for a number of years. Yeah, contrary to popular belief about brainwashing, we have been brain dirtied. Therefore, we need teachings to wash our brains of all the nonsense that we have taken up all of this time being born, particularly educated, certainly in the Western Hemisphere for most on this call. And therefore, we need our brains washed of all of the nonsense and then reprogrammed, restarted with actual facts or factual information in this day and time. So it was necessary for your ancestors to devise, in the case of the master teacher, as one of the many incarnated masters in this day and time, and certainly the one front facing to us, to devise a method to uncover the spell. So I think the question was asked in last class, a good question. Now, why do you use the Bible, and why do you, but you quote the Bible, you bash it, then you quote the Bible as well. Because if you look up the word antidote, yeah, look that word up in the dictionary, antidote, you'll find that in the antidote, which is a cure for poisoning, yes, the cure for poisoning is a part of the poison. So basically, they feed your immune system, yes, part of little bits of the poison, so that your body's natural defenses can build antibodies into that for that immune system, extract those antibodies, and that becomes part of the cure. So part of the cure to uncover us from the spell we've cast on for these monotheistic religions, which to us in ancient Egypt would have been considered the lesser mysteries, yeah, the ABC baby kindergarten studies of the universe, into the multiverse, into the omniverse, yeah, of all the various different things contained within existence. These would have been kind of baby studies of that, excuse me, which has let us have no understanding or no proper understanding of how life started, how the various different races come about, who and what we are according to natural nature, understanding about DNA, RNA, quantum physics, black holes, suns, various different things in existence, which largely, as human beings, we ignore. In the sense of a person's job, career, house, in the sense 2.3 children, whatever the case may be. And we have to rely on fairy tales as to what happens after death. And those religions justify why we have pain now, because you're supposed to be getting it later, when many different people around the world, the Sultan of Brunei being one of them, can have heaven on earth right now. And certainly even more than the heaven being described in the books called the Bible, the Quran, so on and so forth. And saying if you've got enough money to achieve that. Yeah, but that's got nothing to do with what our ancient ancestors were doing, seemingly, building pyramids and various different other mounds in the Americas, even ziggurats, if we want to lean on the Anunnaki side of our maybe more adverse genes, around the world. What were they doing that for? And that question has not been answered really to date in any significant way that is being utilized today. Yeah, it's being studied, it's being dug up, it's being uncovered, but what was it for? Exactly. How does it tie into human beings today? And who taught them? Because human beings don't just all of a sudden run up and start inventing, well, let's just invent a mobile phone. Yeah, they say necessity is the mother of invention. More time. So who taught them? Yeah, and why? And where did those people come from? Yeah, so these are the questions that we should be curious about. The spell has even deadened that interest. The spell has made it that you don't even want to find out. For the majority of people, not probably for the people on this call, but for the majority of people, they're not even curious to find that out. And that's a problem. Yeah. So, various different teachers along the way, and the culmination of that, because of certain plans which were disrupted, as you know, the FBI through COINTELPRO did not start in the 60s. It started all the way with Marcus Garvey. So almost 100 years, I think, almost 100 years for them that they had on certain groups, etc., that they saw were a threat, as they saw it, basically, our rise was that they considered a threat to them. So the FBI, a political organization with a spiritual agenda, to stop the rise of a black messiah. That's a spiritual agenda, it's not a political agenda. And the person, J. Edgar Hoover, do some research on this individual, the man was full of hate. And his hate was encapsulated, particularly in the fact that he was homosexual, a cross-dresser, and in those times, because he couldn't come out, then that hate then gets spewed in the destruction of other people, you understand, because of the shame that he felt for that situation. You understand? So that's maybe one reason why not to get caught up on anybody's sexuality, because certain people who have, certain men, I should say, have been of that persuasion, have caused serious amount of destruction as a result of that. Now, in the book, Are There Black Devils, written by a master teacher in May, it released in May 2002, interesting enough, it says in there that shame is the root of all insanity in the world. It's such a profound statement. Yeah, it's in bold. Shame is the root of all insanity in the world. So if you look at all of the craziness, all the madness, all the certain things that go on, the lie, deceit, murder, generally speaking, it can all go back to the attribute of shame. You understand? So shame is a very powerful emotion. And so as black people, I know we got a lot of shame. Sometimes shame is good, though. You know what I mean? So you don't embarrass ourselves. But yeah, it goes back to that. And it can be also a barrier to progress because it's linked to fear. understood, and fear, false education, appear real. These are enemies of spiritual progress and development in that regard. Yeah, it's nothing to do with like being proud of oneself or proud of one's appearance, so on and so forth. But these attributes have caused serious problems and embedded significantly within these various different religions, which if you look at the manifestation, the visual manifestation of the world today, you only need to look at the Bible and the Quran to see the mind that sits behind it. So the mind of the stuff in those books, as I say, the mental forces that sit within those books, and what we see as the manifestation, outward manifestation of the world that we live in today, is a manifestation of the imagination or the ideas or the visualization of what is in those books. You understand? Yeah, hence, well, we'll leave that for now. We'll leave that for now. So we went through various periods of time over the last 30 years. So the first period of awakening, called the first half an hour, first 30 years, symbolic of 30 minutes of that half-hour period from 1970 to the year 2000, was to uncover those monotheistic religions and point out to us, as I say, that they came from the Sumerian doctrine, which a lot of people now say it's a bit different, but a lot of people have no concept or knowledge of. And this is to that you can see through facts and research that the deities sitting in the various seats within those Bibles are nothing more than these extraterrestrials referred to in the Sumerian tablets as the Anunnaki. Yeah, those who came from Anu those who came from Anu to Earth in 50s. We did a little bit of a detailed session covering their journey, etc. here in the last session, so seek out that more history part 2. Yeah, so these are the people sitting in the various seats in those positions, and that's what the detailed study or immersing. We lived those cultures, we lived those religions. We were the best of Muslims, we were the best of Christians, we were the best of so-called Judahites. So we lived those religions. So when it came now to uncovering and stepping back into the Sumerian tablets, it was amazing now to see what was really going on versus what the preacher was teaching. Do you understand what I'm saying? Just read Revelation chapter 19. That's just one. And ask yourself, well, what's going on there with the food for the gods doctrine, which I'm going to get into too much today, but understand the nature of the people you're dealing with, and why this character here, or these Anunnaki, are the devil masquerading as God. Certainly when you're looking at those deities of the Bible and the Quran, to us at least, as we are looking at it, because we were around a lot longer before these doctrines even came around. Yeah, you are basically looking at the devil and God as one being, an individual, in their doctrine. We have our own stories, our own deities, our own so-called, if you want to use that word, Jesus, you know what I mean, in terms of Savior, what that is. We have our own stories, over 10,500 years older than the ones you read about in the so-called Roman and Greek versions, all influences, say, out of ancient Mesopotamia. Understood? So this being Nana, who is really there, Jesus, the being of Isaiah 14:12, who is the same being in Revelation chapter 22, verse 16. That is their Jesus. Understand? And the one that the world particularly is worshipping today. Understood? Came back, let's say, at the end of the world for the rapture. And their rapture is about taking human beings for food. Yeah, men on the menu. Yeah, don't believe me. Check it out. So, even in their book of Revelation, chapter 10, verse 7, it talks about the mystery of God should be finished. And so that's what the master teacher was doing, all of those painstaking hours of teaching, working with the sisters in the office to produce these books, to get this information out, because obviously in the past we learned that leaders, obviously, who speak are assassinated, and once the person's assassinated or in prison, so on and so forth, that's no more they can add to the story. So putting things in books provides obviously a legacy of information that can, not that we would wish that to happen, but that can exist past the point of the person expiring, or the physical body of the person who's doing the teaching expiring. Now, so the doctrine that we're dealing with and we're talking about today is referred to as Wu-Sabat, the spiritual science of us as ancient Africans, and today we are referred to as Sabaeans, tied into not only the language that we speak, because people without a language are not a people. Language informs culture, and more importantly, it informs the spiritual approach and our connection in tones to our ancestors. So we are known today, which is to say the reimagining of that spiritual science given to those, as taught to those ancient Egyptians, as taught to the first people, the Sand people in South Africa. They were given a way of life. That way of life, who's known as Wu-Sabat, is known as Wu-Sabat in this day and time. Our language is known as Sabati or Ispatia, and the people are referred to as Musbatu. You can see our scripts there on the walls in ancient Egypt. Sabaean or Sabaic. Where, as I say, that is still been brought back to us today, in short form, as we build ourselves up to learn it in its proper entirety. Again, it's the number one thing, as I say, that we should be seeking to master. Most difficult, but number one thing that we should be seeking to master, in terms of what's happened to us and what one of the key cures is to get us back to speaking our own language. Now, obviously, they tried various approaches in the 60s. People speaking Swahili, but the thing is just picking any old African language. I didn't say any old, but picking an African language is not the case. Swahili is a mixture of Bantu and Arabic, and it is a slave master's language. Caucasians get a lot of heat for so-called slavery of our people, and there seems to be this thing where, particularly people have been in prison, etc., influenced by that, and then come out and make music, and the rappers, and there seems to be a obsession or association with Islam being cool. But the Arabs, which the word Arab means mixed, look it up, are responsible for just as much slavery, if not more, of our people than the more classical Caucasian. So certainly how Islam has been used as a slave trading language and a pacification system of our people throughout the ages, which is one of the reasons why I talk about the Malian Moor, Mansa Kanka Musa, moved from Mali to the Americas because he was dissatisfied with the invasion of Islam. I say invasion, it's not necessarily by war, but it's by people coming into your country and bringing their culture with them into what that time was obviously that West African empire. So decided to jump on sailboats and then use the tides to make his way to what's called the Americas, or to us, Africa, remember, is in the middle. So this way they don't teach you. So you talk about Middle East, but then, well, how do you get middle of East? How's that happen? You see, where's the middle of East? Because we're on an orb, floating through space. So at what point does East start and West begin? What part does North start and South begin? So on and so forth. So it's very difficult. Africa was obviously in the middle, and to the east of Africa, that's where you have some people and the culture and civilization. But they taught you about the Middle East, but don't talk you about Middle West. Middle West, where we had an Egyptian culture, which is why when you look at Africa in the east and certain Egyptian cities, Tamarayan cities, why are those same names of those cities? We find them in America, in the States. Memphis, Harlem. Yes, look up some of these names of these cities. See Egyptian cities in America. And so one time these land masses were joined together. It's only an illusion that one ocean is named one thing versus another thing. At what point it's all connected water. Man has come along and said, hey, this is our border. It's all earth, if we're talking about land. So man has come along and created these illusions for control. Understood? Yeah, so we have to get back to what is right and what is real, the actual facts. It says that the second resurrection of the true lost tribe and the restoration of our true guidance Wu-Sabat. So we were lacking in this day and time a spiritual science which would help to unify the minds of our people, and then the physical unity will follow. This is why predominantly the other races are unified under a particular religion. Now, obviously, there's various different denominations, etc., but they have a keen sense, at least, or many do, of that religion. They see themselves as the prophets, the gods, so on and so forth. When it comes to us, we're always worshipping other than self and kind. And you cannot achieve greatness in second place. They cannot achieve greatness by being in the image and after the likeness of races who you gave birth to. Yeah, and you cannot achieve greatness if by copying people who don't even have your best interests at heart. They seek to, as I say, live off of the energy and works that we produce. So part of our realignment is that we must connect back to the natural tones within natural nature. Yeah, they made you feel a way about your connection to music, but sound, which is not just what we hear, but is what we receive from space and beyond. Yeah, that's real definition of sound. In that regard, our connection to sound and our connection to frequencies, because everything in existence is vibrating. Yeah, and our ability to transition up and down these scales, or manifestation of that blackness, being melanated children and children of the sun, is significant. And we certainly have to understand the science of music to start to unlock the powers within nature, referred to by some as black magic. Yeah? Magic is when nature works for you and you are black. It's got nothing to do with cutting the throats of chickens and trying to fund your music career. Now, the symbols that we see here, as I say, talk about how we got here, and where we came from, and how we got here, and how we arrived. And at a certain point, for following these classes or reading our books, you'll be able to uncover exactly what this means, and they will not be foreign to you. And this is where your mind now is starting to open, and that reconnection back to your ancient ancestors is formulating and taking shape, and we are becoming who and what they designed us to be. Understood? Yeah, separate to what we have become in terms of making various different decisions in this society, oftentimes for survival, or based on what we were taught and what we know, based on the environment that we're in. But then what are we? Who are we? What's our purpose? These are all questions, certainly, that we spend, some can spend a lifetime seeking the relevant answers to, and in certain cases being interpreted as religion. Yeah, being interpreted as religion, but it doesn't necessarily mean it has to be religion in the way in which they capture it today. So, I'm not going to go into this in too much detail, but we're dealing with actual facts and knowledge. The new spirituality in this day and time is factual information. Understood? Yeah, and as said before, it's about a unifying force. Our mind is unified, and your ancestors, those ancient Egyptians who built various different monuments and pyramids, obviously being one of the most famous, were of a mindset where they didn't believe anything. Yeah, because belief is the acceptance of what you don't know to be true. Yeah, it's considered to be ignorance. Ignorance, defined in Wu-Sabat, is to ignore the facts. So belief is acceptance of things that we don't know. But they didn't believe when we were in our higher state, proper state of our mind, our state of Tatmun, perfection. Yeah, we were in that higher state of mind. We did not believe. Yeah, so all we are saying, and we're going to go through a lot of the things today in this class, and predominantly all we are saying as Sabaeans is that we are here, descendant from our ancestors, particularly those 4 generational ancestors, up to 4 generations, up to your great-great-grandmother, great-great-grandfather, which you inherit a 1 in 30 chance of inheriting any of those genes. We are descendants of our ancestors. We start there first. And the fact that you're here, i.e., as a human being, means that you must have had a mother and father. According to natural laws in nature, you must have had a mother and father. Because you are the result of something that's taken place before you. Even though you were there, but you wasn't necessarily consciously aware of that what that took place. But you must have had a mother and father based on the result. If somebody says 2 plus and they put a question mark and they say equals 5, well, based on that, you're able to work out what the question mark symbolizes, aren't you? In a mathematical sense. So this is what is the result of the union between a man, and a woman in that regard, to produce a child. That's how nature's rules are set up. So actual facts, we'll be expressing that in various ways. Actual facts are expressed in these 9 different ways, and that's designed to help you be able to confirm whether something is true or not true, or factual, I should say, as opposed to true, factual or not factual. And so we talk about the 2 U's, who you are according to nature and what you have accepted according to nature. So again, I've gone into this in several classes before, so I won't go into this in loads of detail, but you're always seeking confirmation. So this is the Master Teacher talking in a book called The Proof. I am a who, not a what. I've incarnated this time for you to know only 9 worthy quests. So in the journey, which the word quest implies, obviously the actionable or the verbiage of that is question, isn't it, with the ION at the end. So the quest that we are on is to find out, is to uncover. As ontologists, we want to get to the root of a thing. As Sabians. Sabians are also factologists. So we're looking to deal in facts. Because facts is the best knowledge. Why believe when you can know? Why speculate when you can know? You want to find out things. You want to know. Belief in fears doubt. Knowing things gives you confidence. Yes? So we want to know things in this day and time. We're not going to base our soul on faith and belief when we can find out and know what's happening. It's not a roulette wheel that you throw the ball on, and hope it lands on black when you're dealing with your religious thing, and then wait until you die until you find out whether the thing's just when you die, it's too late. Who's come back from the dead to be able to say, hey, it's all a trick? What they will tell you is a load of rubbish. No, the rules in nature at this particular time don't allow us to come back in that way. We do come back, but they don't come back in that way. We have knowledge of the past in that regard to warn people of the trickery and chicanery that goes on. You understand? And so this is, it's not about race hate, but certain things are connected to race. How many spiritual practices, be it marriage, births, various different things, is a Caucasian minister in front trying to connect spiritually for us in that particular ritual? When if you think about it, just on a practical sense, if you look at your skin color and you look at the night sky, which has birthed everything, space, how can you go through that conduit? How is that conduit going through that conduit going to connect you to the heavens in that way? The person's of a lower vibrational rate than you are. You're closer to the blackness of space than they are. But belief will have you fooled that they can do something for you in that regard, spiritually. And because we're here, faith and belief, we put all our trust, and they know it's all a ruse. They know it's all bull crap. It's just that you've got to pay for those ceremonies. You've got to pay for those things. And so you're seeking spirituality from those who cannot give it to you. Not according to nature's rules in that regard. Now, confirmation, and the third one is numerology, before I forget. So numerology, so the science of numbers. We are interested in that, at least from our perspective. Numbers and numerology and symbolism means different things to different people. So here we see animism, which is Wu-Sabat here. I don't know what we've got there as an old title, but Wu-Sabat as animism. I'm going to get more into that, interesting enough, in the second class and some more deal when we talk about the breath. As you can see there from the definition, life, breath, soul. So we believe, but we have the viewpoint or opinion that we descend from that energy state, that soul form first, before we manifest it into the physical. We were son, or we are descendants of the sun. That's why we talk about us being descendants from our ancestors or sun cestors. We descended down from that gaseous or energy state. And so that is us as a soul people. So also that originally from Orion and Sirius in the form that we have it today. Interesting enough, in a book referred to my brother, the extraterrestrial. Listen to this. It says, so Nwapu or Sabatu, Musbatu is the people and Wunawap is the religion. So updated Musbatu, is the people and Wu-Sabat is the religion. So the question is being asked, so Nwapu is the people and Wu-Sabat is a religion, so the question is being asked. Answer, it could be called that only because religion means Latin from religio, holiness, and holy is sun from Heliopolis or ancient Hammam, Egypt, as Tel Hissin or place of the sun, which Heliopolis means, which is where the crafts of Amun-Ra landed from Sahat, Orion, and Sabatat, Sirius star systems. And Hermopolis is where Tahuti, Thoth landed from Sabat, Sirius. Yet, in fact, it's only the true way of living given to you by Parnatharu, Parwahanu, the overseers of ancient Hammam, Egypt, our true Salafu ancestors. So it's of interest to you as we talk about linking to our 4 generations, but then going back, so that mother gave birth to that daughter, so on and so forth. That going back even further is referred to as our soul seed. And so going way back, when we're talking about the Amun-Ra's, the Ashtat, who they call Isis, the Asars, who they call Osiris, going further enough down the line, we are linked to them, understood, by blood and by our soul, our etheric link to them as our ancestors. One time they was thought to be myth. Until they start finding bodies or digging up bodies. So this is interesting. Our link to our ancestors is extraterrestrial. I'm not talking about Star Trek here, but as I say, extra, terra, astral. As we step through these classes, it's a part of our culture. They went along and have made us, the conscious community, and many others ashamed of that side. Is that word shame again? Ashamed to talk about that side because they ran up ahead in Hollywood, which we've explained to you before. Hollywood, there is the wood that Merlin's wand was made out of, and they cast, with casting agents, they cast spells on the minds of people. So it was to run up. So when the truth, or the real truth about who and what you are, where you came from, what your ancestors were doing, how they got outformation coming to them in the form of information, it would seem like a science fiction movie. When actually, for most of us, we're reading, when we're looking at certain films and movies or whatever, the truth that's in the movie is oftentimes taken from our story. That's what gives it validity. Their connection to ancient Egypt or ancient Africa in their Bible is what gives their story a foundation. And they've been doing that continuously for the last 6,000 years. It hasn't changed. All that's happened is it's transformed from ink and paper to the printing press, observed from the 15th century on now through movie screens. It hasn't changed. And that's what comes at the end of the cycle with the fiction and the lies of 6 ether into 3 ether ghost stational forces. As opposed to facts, it's fiction, myth, and legends. As opposed to facts. Go and look up the European story, and the different country names to see where it leads you back to for the etymology. See if it describes where the people came from and who they are and what color they are. Their power comes through the media and the television. Yeah, this is what Ba'h B'ah was talking about when he talks about and uncovered the mysteries of Revelations. For example, Revelations chapter 13, it talks about, and they bringing the beast to life. Yeah, they killed off, allegedly, this mysterious character, fictional character, killed him off because people started asking questions about this story. Well, where is he? Who is he? We want to see these great miracles. So they had to kill him off because they made him up in the first place. So they killed him off so nobody could find the individual and made him into a spirit. And then they resurrected that spirit, or they brought the spirit or gave it back to life through movies. Yeah, Jesus, Metro Goldwyn and Mayer, yeah, one of the key ones, yes, making movies about the so-called Bible stories or whatever, and they're responsible, let's say, for some of the most devastating psychological attacks on our race. Yeah, they get away with it today. Even the BBC has to hold an L for that as well, showing those movies. How you think about what has made you feel inferior? Yeah, feel inferior. Half of that stuff has come through or even more than that's come through television, come through the programs that you watched as a kid. Yeah, you're still having to deal with the remnants of that today. So the reality of the situation is they've used that to run ahead certain concepts or whatever and make you feel embarrassed about your connection to the stars, connection to the ancestor, the greatness of your ancestors. If it was them that did it, I'd guarantee you there'd be movie after movie, program after program. They're always trying to write themselves into our story. Always. Yeah, even now. Yeah, redrawing the images and things that we carved into stone and painted onto stone. They're redrawing it, making the features more European. They refer to it as antique, just to write themselves into the greatness. I mean, this is the cancer of racism on this planet today. And when you point it out, they want to make you the racist. So, interesting enough, we didn't get to cover this in too much detail, but you see here Zoroastrianism. So, interesting enough, you see here the monotheistic religions are kind of a bit way down here, Hebrewism, so on and so forth, but they all really, the religion of the Caucasians, so our spiritual science is Wu-Sabat or animism. The spiritual science of the Caucasian is Wicca. Yeah, the Wicca religion, like Wicca the furniture. Yeah, Druidism. That is the Celt religion of the Celtics. Yeah, or the Vikings. Yeah, you see V1, kings or kinsmen. V1 is what, 6, correct? Yeah, in the Roman numerals. So the 6 kinsmen. Yeah, also tied into 6 ether forces. Yeah, the Celtics clans, that is who they really are. Yeah, and their religion, which is given to them by their overlords, is Wicca, yeah, or Druidism, as you see today. So a lot of secret societies, very few, they allude as if they're coming out of ancient Egypt, but this is the influence, yeah, Wicca and Druidism. And that was influenced out of Zoroastrianism, yeah, which is fire worship. Yeah, the worship of fire. And here, let's just look at this from actual facts, the history, so we get to cover this. Wait. Right, it says, yet we, Morazaku, Riskians, ask you, Musbatu Sapiens, do not be easy unsettled if you fail the lifts of 2003 or 2013. Don't be alarmed by who speaks without the Kadash secret, Rahachek knowledge. Their reports and their Madatat words are those of the one blinded by the Za'amus religions. Yeah, Za'amus, it's like opinions. Yeah, there's faith in the Mesopotamian Dagar deity. Yeah, the fish deity. Talking about that a bit later. And Zoroaster taught as Ahura Mazda. Ahura Mazda, according to biblical history, if you really look into it, it's because Abraham, remember, before they even converted to the religion of the Most High by his being named Melchizedek, he was a Chaldean, and that's who he worshipped, the deity Ahura Mazda. Yeah, he was a Zoroastrian. if that's the correct pronunciation, excuse me. Yeah, and Ahura Mazda, look, an Anunnaki who taught Tammuz to teach the Adamites Za'am, the religion of Nara, fire worship on earth, sun worship in the Patat sky, which became the Lord God of Mapfar, heaven and earth, and the light of the Tapal world, the eternal flame, the bright one. Yeah, so Ahura Mazda is influenced, as I say, what's considered to be the worship of fire. We didn't worship the sun, we are the sun. The terrestrial version of the sun on earth. That's why we have a solar plexus, which we go into again in more when we do the breath class. We are the terrestrial representation of the suns. And excuse me, but they worship fire, or the fire worship. And it also ties in, if you look at it even today, that manifests itself when the so-called Illuminati infiltrated what they call Euro-Freemasonry today, and for a man, or for the teachings of a man by the name of Albertus Magnus, yeah, and the order of the Alberts, yeah, Albert Pike, Albert Mackey, Albert Einstein, understood, yeah, but they switched the bloodline, the first name with the last name to hide certain bloodlines, and one called Prince Harry today. If you check back, he was wearing the symbol of the swastika. But see, everybody seems to have forgotten about that for some reason. Yeah, and he marries who the world perceives at least as a black woman. In that regard. So fire worship coming through them is Zoroastrian. It's still manifested today. When the people talk about the Most High, most of the descriptions of people talking about God in a monotheistic relation today, which you learned if you were a Sabaean, you were taught this, in those first 30 years on into when the Devil's Rule ended. That 6,000-year rule ended, and we went into our story now in the year 2000. Books like Jesus Found in Egypt, Luciferian Conspiracy, The Beginning, went into this in a lot of detail. And so if you haven't gone through this, or you're in your early part of your studies, it's a good thing to kind of start and know, because many of the stories, if not many of the stories, basically, if you can get this, I'm saying to people on the phone right now, if you're on this webinar right now, if you can get this, basically understand that most of the stories that we learned in those monotheistic religions are nothing but the birth and death of galaxies, the birth and death of solar system. It's all cosmology, a lot of the stuff that we're dealing with there. Yeah, and simply where the confusion came in with the spell is because the so-called Judahites of Judaism were enslaved to the Babylonians, correct? The Babylonians are linked to the Sumerians, the Anunnaki. Yeah. The Anunnaki, in their stories, they name planets after people the same way we name, a street down the road after someone famous, Martin Luther King, or, you know what I mean? I'm sure when the Queen passes, they're going to name many monuments and various different things after her. Yeah, so places are named after people. And what happened is, over time and age, when others picked it up, Jews picked it up, then on into the Romans and the Greeks, so on and so forth, they started to anthropomorphize, I don't think that's the pronunciation, you know what I'm trying to say, those objects. So when you think of Venus, for example, what do you see? You think, the goddess of love. But Venus is a planet, correct? You think of Jupiter or Mars. Yeah, there's a version of them where in certain cultures they're seen as people. But the real truth behind it is it's describing planets. Yeah, Mars, a god of war. Yeah, all these different terminologies in certain cultures. So the Jews got caught up, or Judahites got caught up in that, forgetting that it's talking about planets and thinking it's talking about people. Hence, the children of Israel, 12 tribes, which is actually really 13. Yeah, because they forget about the female tribe. What's that describing? It's the 12 celestial houses. Yeah, we're going to find out a bit later what the female tribe represents. You really think Jesus had 12 disciples? 12 disciples again? Yeah, the Ishmaelites, 12 sons again. So this took years for the master to teach the master teacher teach us to uncover this spell. Yeah, to get us away from worshipping what was simply sun worship, the Most High. Well, the highest thing in the sky to us as human beings, yeah, the most prominent thing in the sky is the sun. We see it every day. Okay? The most prominent thing in the sky is the sun. They talk about being enlightened. Yeah, the light bulb moment they talk about in terms of associating light with mental acuity, mental forces, mental thoughts. If you cut up a human being's head, there's no light inside. Yeah, it's the black light we're dealing with. The black light, similar to the light that one is able to use when you wake up in the so-called nighttime or darkness, yeah, and your eyes adjust and you're able to see in the dark. You pick up visual purple. It's the black light we're dealing with, not this burning light of fire. You see the so-called harlot holding in the new Yorkshire. Understood? So this is when we really start to uncover what is taking place. As I say, we need to go further back into prehistory to see what's really going on. So, say Sabaeans, independent since 1992, and the master teacher, His Excellency Dr. Malachi Z. York Okran, a Liberian diplomat, is being held in Florence ADX. It's been there now. It's come up to 18 years, 18 years next week. So we fight for his freedom. As I say, he's in there for what he teaches. Yeah, for what he's taught. And when we put out that list of those 7 main teachers, yeah, go and look at the history of what happened to some of those people who have brought many of the doctrines that people have shown interest in, at least in the last 100 or so years. Yeah, how did it end for them? Yeah, how were they stopped, targeted? Yeah, some died poor, some killed, some assassinated. But now they realize, well, if you kill somebody, you create a martyr. You create an ancestor for them to mentally lock onto. So ain't doing that no more. We've got to attack the person's character first before we kill them. Assassinate the character. Yeah, which is why there is certainly in the movie world, if you want to look at it from that perspective, yeah, many of the actors they have played a lot of these parts or whatever. You know, when they have their actors, you know, Tom Cruise is never seen wearing a dress, or Harrison Ford, you've never seen him wearing a dress. I mean, you want to wear a dress, but you've never seen it. So they keep their masculine icons very masculine, as they keep their feminine icons very feminine in that regard. There's certain ones who they promote in the biggest movies, the biggest films, or whatever the case may be. When they do it to the blacks, they always got to, you know what I mean, take them or embarrass them in some way throughout their career. So if you make Will Smith the biggest movie star, they can always show that film. You understand, whatever it's called, 6 Degrees of Separation. You understand, if you've ever seen that movie, and see they can show that movie. But Harrison Ford hasn't got one of those. Yeah, so, and it's amazing oftentimes how the way they cast certain things. They'll cast a person in the blackest of blackest roles. Yeah, blackity black. And in real life, the person is in a mixed race relationship. Now, I'm not interested in what a person, or we're not interested in what people do in their bedroom, but you see the games that are being played. Yeah, so you can't gravitate, can't grab on, you know what I mean, to the person holistically or fully in that regard. There comes problematic in that way. Understood? So this is what happens in some of the games we play to stop creating legacy and things for you to grab onto, yeah, to unlock that, let's say, spiritual power within. Okay, I need to get cracking on now. So, no one wins a race in racism. We're talking about a few genetic subjects today, so we don't deal in race hate. We deal with the promotion of our race in terms of positivity, but there are certain subjects that we need to touch upon because they, as I say, based on what's happening, we have to have understanding into an overstanding of what race means and genes and genetics, so on and so forth. So let's move through some of these we've covered them in previous classes. So let's get on to the next part because we're running out of time. Okay, so one of the things we talk about ancient Egypt or Black Egypt or the rebirth of Egypt is our connection to the stars. Yeah, so when we talk about our Natharu, as say the kind of starting of these classes, we've made it known that when we are talking about our ancestors or how they were depicted or how they were shown, they are suns. So if you're having a visualization in your mind, that is what they are. You understand? Yeah, suns, sort of suns, many millions of them you see out there. That is how we saw the Natharu. One of the things they do is that they've done to us in religion is they've taken away the reality of the visual. So if I said to you, okay, well, if you've got a brother, what does your brother look like? What does your sister look like? What does your mother look like? What does your father look like, if you know these characters? There's an image in your head. Yeah, the moment you say God, no image. Yeah, there's no image. Stunted. So somewhere along the line, that image, say, was taken away so it can be subliminally replaced with, let's be honest, white man. Old white man in heaven is what has subliminally been interpreted as God through movies, cartoons, so on and so forth. This is what happens. You understand? So here, our clear interpretation, and you look at the iconography, is that the Panatharu were suns emitting, obviously, within Fa'ut all existence, yeah, which we are all a part of. Yeah, but the Natharu were suns, which we were receiving outformation, and when it comes here on the planet Earth, it becomes information. And we see, if we look more closely, yes, at the hands being extended, yeah, in that kind of curved shape, is sending signals. And some of the rays here are carrying what? Unks. So i.e. we're receiving what? What's the Ankh? Ankh is the key of life. Yeah, it's about producing children, progeny. Understood? So some of that message being conveyed and carried, which is the science of actually Wu-Sabat, yeah, is life itself. But not all the hands are holding Ankh. So therefore it's showing you that other outformation, which is supposed to be informing us, is being received. But if we are ignorant to it, then it just passes us by, isn't it? If we're ignorant to it, because we're ignoring it. We're ignoring the fact that with this melanin that we have, that we are receiving cosmic outformation every waking moment of the day. But can we interpret it? Can we translate it? This is the issue. So one was sent to translate that outformation in the form of information to enable you to reconnect back with your ancient ancestors again. Yeah, and look at the head shapes here. Do you think this is terrestrial or extraterrestrial? Food for thought, some might say. So this is the Safaf symbol of the Natharu as our overseers. Yeah, so we are their children. Now, one of the things that if we stick in our head for ancient in our ancestors and trying to understand our culture is this, yeah? And some of you would be more familiar with this than others, maybe on the call. It says, out space is within you, Musbatu Sabians, as much as the rules of space are within you. Yeah, so what's out there in existence? It's the same setup in your human body. Yeah, by saying, know thyself. Yeah, you know how your lungs works, know how your brain works, know how your best organs, how your blood works, etc. Study you because you are a universe. So it's saying outer and inner space are the exact same. So mastery of without or out there starts within. Yeah, because it's the same setup. And if you understand these connections, understood, then using one's reasoning, skills and abilities, which we have, with our brain capacity and mental capacity, using our reason abilities, we are able to deduct certain things and uncover and understand and confirm certain facts and truths about the environment and the universe, so on and so forth, without necessarily having to experience a thing, do you understand, in terms of the various different tests of what knowledge is required to confirm whether something is factual or not. So you understand that your ancestors are the ones who really built heaven on earth. Yeah, and if Matthew chapter 6:9 has any validity, which is really talking about as above, so below. Yeah, if you really take it in the literal proper sense, it is us as the ancient Africans, the ancient Egyptians, who basically built heaven on earth. Yeah, because our structures were in sync or in tune with the stars. Yeah, as you see here with the Giza pyramids at one point were in sync with the 3 stars of the Orion belt. Yeah, and the Nile River, or Nine River as it should be rightfully called, basically followed the similar pattern of the stars or the outer aspects of the Milky Way galaxy. Understood. So the stars were in sync, or we recognized that we came from the heavens, and so that was going to replicate itself here on Earth as their children. Yes, cycles happening within nature. This is why 9 is expressed within our doctrine as 3 times 3. Yeah, because you're talking about things taking place in the world or the existence of Earth. Understood? Yeah, or the human body. Then a planetary scale, and then obviously within suns themselves and the environment they sit within. Yeah, so we're getting 3 different states of the same type of systems replicating themselves. Yeah, we have to understand this insofar as well, because a person's genes are connected to their etheric or spiritual ancestry who are no longer physical. There's ways, obviously the culture, or what you would consider to be that religious culture, was always designed to keep that connection, because human beings forget things. So to keep that in the consciousness, you understand? So the buildings, the way we looked, certain practices, the way we ate food, the way we dressed, everything was designed to remind us, to keep us on that higher frequency, or our frequency, not higher, but our frequency. In that regard. Yeah, so we built heaven and earth. And interesting enough, look at those numbers. Matthew chapter 6, verse 9. Yeah, so 9 is Nupu, yeah, positive, agreeable forces, understood, and 6 is Zupu, yeah, disagreeable forces. So 1 is a force of life, 1 is a forces of death and decay. Understood? Or 9 also is what? Mental power, and sex, or 6, yeah, it gives a person their physical power. And mind must rule over body in this day and time. Yeah, so they got them the other way around. You know what I mean? But 9 must rule over body in this day and time. But we come from the heavens. Yeah, so see here, again, in our connection to these star constellations of Orion and Sirius, most significantly in this current incarnation. So, yeah, it's in alignment of these pyramids, as I say, and structures with these star constellations. See here, Pleiades, Aldebaran, Orion, and Sirius or Cyrus. Yeah, another map again, showing again this correlation with the stars. Seeing that into Andromeda there. So, I've gone through this so much times in the past, so I'm not going to go through this in too much detail. Again, this is evidence of, as I say, the outformational side influencing what takes place here on Earth, and how that connection takes place, and how our story of how we got here is shown in is masked within this religion called Islam today. And actually, this is nothing but a Tamarian story, and it holds the same. It's as above, so below. It holds the original pieces of the comet through panspermia that seeded life here on Earth. As you can see here, our depiction of the Orion star constellation is of an upright pharaoh, so to speak. Yeah, Pa-para Raye Aha. Yeah, the proper pronunciation of Pharaoh. Pa-para Raye Aha. Yeah, the temple of the sun and the moon. That's what it means, or stands for. Temple of the sun and the moon. So here, obviously, we see that, and people see this before, but I'll quickly go over it for those who've not seen this class before. You see that this is Tutankhamun. They say Tutankhamun with their poor pronunciation, but Tutankhamun standing with his apron raised. And he wasn't a man until he could raise the apron. That's symbolic of the erect phallus. As you see here, underneath this upright pharaoh standing, yeah, the Orion Nebula is placed here, where that phallus would be. I'm having to be literal in that regard, not to cause anybody any offense, but yeah, having to be literal so that you kind of get it. Yeah. So here, in that depiction, this is where the Orion Nebula was, and let's say 225 billion years ago, approximately, the comets bringing the gases that led to the creation of water here on this planet came from the Orion Nebula, yeah, before life in our form started in that particular way, but it obviously helped to make this environment conducive for our life form. Yeah, 224 billion years ago, another comet crashed here, which is the one in the Kaaba, right about 4.5 billion years ago, as you can see there, which led to the development of amino acids, which are absolutely crucial to the development of life here on Earth, in terms of their relationship to the ability for DNA to construct, used RNA to construct proteins. Understood? Yeah. And so, and then organs into life. So this is here, yeah, where life started from. It was always known. It's not some spook spirit being somewhere. These are the simple facts. Yeah, the life out there is the same way. Life out there is the same way life out here. Same system. Yeah, out space, in space, exactly the same. Yeah, in terms of out, under now, and overstanding, because it's coming from out there into an understanding of where we came from, yeah, how life started here first, which scientists are uncovering. It's the religious world now is seen behind with a problem. Now, again, this kind of Black Egypt debate is probably a bit of a misnomer, but we understand, just quickly to recap over this, and I've been again over this a good few times. They talk about dynastic Egypt. They try and separate dynastic and pre-dynastic from each other. Now, our understanding, or the way we would classify it, is that what you had coming together, because we've got the Anunnaki side of the, I'm loosely going to use the word family because it's part of it's within our genes through mixing. Remember, Inky mixed in with the Sands people, with us as the Sands people, in a place they referred to as Abzu in South Africa. So I think a little bit in the last class we went over the relationship with Alelu and some of the history to deal with that, yeah, and how Inky, when he came to Earth the second time in physical form, encountered Alelu in South America. Now, Alelu had access to, was exceptionally studious and had knowledge of the ancient ones and the ancient ways, and had knowledge of the seeding of life here on Earth by the Natharu. Overstood, which is one of the reasons why he set up in the Americas to stay away from their project or their seeding project, i.e. their children. Inky, more ignorant of that, when he was seeking obviously the gold, he mixed in with those Sands people, and hence why we have, let's say, a slight hybrid mix of Anunnaki genes and our Natharu genes in that regard. So that was one of the interceptions or interventions in the genes, obviously, which has occurred. Obviously, many has happened thereafter. This is symbolic of another one as well, where in the Bible story, when you talk about the Noah story is really symbolic of the hybrids or certain Giborat, when those 204 angels mixed in with some of the descendants of the Adamites. Some of those Anunnaki also mixed in with certain groups of blacks or Dravidians, and it gave birth to the Nimrods and the Sargon II of this world, who basically, being that they were hybrid in nature, they wanted to reconnect with their ancient Tamaraean heritage. Understood? And so you had two cultures emerging, as that's what it says there. One built pyramids and one was building ziggurats. So it says some say some building squares, some building circles. Understood? Now, in that story, it talks about an incident where certain, let's say, these hybrid or Sumerians came back and wanted to rejoin back with that ancient African culture. And the first pharaoh under this new style or type of Egypt was Nama. Understood? Yeah. And so he presided, was the first one of these, what they call dynastic periods. So a coming together of two different cultures. But the Sumerians, because they'd been away or out for so long, so out then to come back in, their descendants coming back in, they were considered to be savages. Yeah, so had to be then reinitiated back into the mystery schools. And this is what you're seeing taking place here, where certain passwords being whispered into the individual from mouth to ear. It is the Sumerians that brought in the fancy masks and the headdress, the animal masks, I should say, and various different things of that nature. Yeah, so pre-dynastic Egyptians, you look at that Ptah, Bes, and different others or whatever, they did not have masks. Yeah, so this is the difference between the two. All of them predominantly are black. You have to go way, way down to get to the Ptolemy dynasty, where we're basically is really watered down, mixed with Europeans. But even then, you've still got people like Cleopatra VII, etc., who were blacks. Yeah, so they like to make this separation to try and tie themselves into the vine, as always, understood, but it simply symbolizes a coming together of, let's say, two separate sides for our genes. Yes, a Hut-Ba-Ta and Hut-Ka-Ta. So Hut-Ba-Ta, house of the soul of Ta. It's a Hut-Ka-Ta or Ka-Ta, house of the spirit of Ta. Yeah, 23 chromosomes to birth 46 dynasties. Those are like nodes, like cities or districts. Yeah, some existing exactly at the same time. So not some sequential approach, right? They try and keep dice like they're sequential, and they're not. They're running obviously alongside each other at certain points. Understood? Yeah. But yeah, that was a hybrid version of us compared to the little people. Yeah, 4 foot 5, 4 for 5 for females, 5 for 4 for men. The little people of pre-dynastic, where the real knowledge and secrets were kept. Yeah, Khufu, or the pharaoh Khufu and his sons, they did not build the pyramids; they renovated them. They had to get the outformation in the form of information and the plans to do what they did. Not say not diminishing what they did, but they had to get those plans from the so-called little people. Yeah, who had that real connection as well with the Natharu. So everything is connected to nature and nature systems. You understand? So us 23, 46 chromosomes for for, as described, the setup, linking, as I say, to us as human beings and ourselves linking to nature. Understood? And here you see the link to where we align ourselves with is Napata and Moreau. Yeah, this is the real us, where our genes are a lot stronger, but all of it is us. Yeah, all of it is us. And to separate, this is Black Egypt because they just want to tie themselves into the vine. The Egyptians today are not Egyptians in the sense of being those ancient Egyptians. They are Muslims. Yeah, and today, digging up no first world people. Yeah, no primitive people are digging up the bones of their ancestors to find out about themselves. Hence why you have an Amenubi giving you that outformation, as I say, in the form of information in this day and time, renewing our story. You don't need to go and dig up the bones to find out who we are, because your ancestors birth beings in the genome amongst us to come and teach. That's our system. Yeah, go and see if the Native Americans are digging up the bones of their ancestors. Or the ancient Dravidians, see if they're digging up the bones of their ancestors. And see who is doing all the digging. Predominantly. Yeah. To get that knowledge, we need to reconnect to the mental reservoir. Open up the channels and reconnect to the mental reservoir. Understood? Not dig up the bones of our ancestors to find out who they are. Yeah, and there are people amongst us, artists, very talented people who are producing, builders, producing the works of our ancestors are coming through, reimagined in this day and time, and they're producing those works to demonstrate and show, hey, look at this, look who we are. This is what the master teacher was doing. Yeah, before we were in prison, we were building a Tamaray, as it was referred to, I think it was Jesse Jackson, a city. Tamaray was a city to demonstrate and show and prove who we are. Why? Because Master said when it's all this terrorism was going on in Egypt, he said, well, it's too dangerous. So I'm going to bring Egypt to you. And for that, you have to do a 135-year stretch. So the stories in the Bible, as I say, have copied out certain characters in our story, and they've merged. This is what's caused all the confusion, because a lot of stories have been, characters should say, have been merged, have cut, chopped, done whatever to take certain stories from ancient times, merge characters together, whatever, and then tell and rehash in this Babel, where Babel, as you know, means confusion. Phonetically linked to the word Bible. It's caused all this confusion. So a number of the Bible characters or whatever are based on people or stories of real people that existed in our story, but they've chopped it up, mashed it up, just like a lot of movies they do in stories, and merged characters together, and then messed up with the timelines, and then say you've got a Roman and Greek version of, which is now, as we step back, that the Bible story is a Caucasian creation story. Yeah. Adam, look up the word, means red and ruddy. It's all about the Anunnaki and the Pleiadian creation, say, of the Caucasian race, starting with them, with the Nordics, or two strands, the red and ruddy, then into the diseased, pale race who encountered disease of leproma or leprosy. Those places in their genes. So the real story is that they're still looking for the Garden of Eden, the bodies of their prophets. They'll never find them because none of those people existed. You understand? Many monuments are, because it's all illusionary symbolism. Yes, and so even Noah's Ark, well, they haven't found Noah's Ark, but they found the Noah who they based the story of Noah on, which is Sen Nefer Rayeh, or Senan Nefer Rayeh, which is Khufu's father, understood, and he had two arks, which they found in a 50s. Yeah. So here, yeah, we see the evidence of that. Yeah. So the arcs that they're looking for, we find in all of this stuff in our story, and the symbolism of our story. So even when you look at here, those cities or dynasties or districts that were set up were referred to as nomes, understood. And what do we see here? 46 dynasties, correct? Yes, 46 dynasties. And what? 46, those chromosomes, there is genomes. Yeah, 46 chromosomes, genomes, yeah? Linking to that, again, to our genes, yeah? Or genome, G, earth, from, they got from the Anunnaki word ki, yeah? Which became ki, qi, or ki, which became geo in, or geo in, by Greeks, understood, and that obviously things pertaining to earth. Yeah, so that earthly place being spoken about is the construction of, or the vessel being referred to as the human body, yeah, which we call the skin suit. As you see in these gnomes here, so you look them up in your own time. This is our 23 chromosomes, see the sex chromosomes, X and Y, there as the 23rd chromosome, stood, yeah, which come together in a male and female to produce a male or female, and these various chromosomes where certain instructions are there, unlocking the secrets of who we are as a universe. So we've shown this before, but if you look up in etymology, you can see gnome, yeah, interesting enough, it's genome, depending on it, but then you've got this word in English, this silent G, called gnome. Yeah, and gnomes are these little people, was to say that they Caucasians put in their garden, but who are the little people that they're referring to? Well, it's those little people, pygmy or genome, referring to elemental earth beings. Yeah, it ties again back into our story. Those sands people, yeah, the little people, yeah. Even gnome, opinion of wise men. It ties back into your story. What's the garden? Well, the garden is Africa. Yeah, one place referred to as the garden. Understood. So everything ties back to your story, but you have to kind of unpick it and find out. Everyone wants to tie in to the vine. Yeah. Here, intelligence. Let's see here. So this is the gnome or Sipat. We showed you this symbol before and how it's been repurposed. Sometimes it's an X-Men label, but it's to you or to us, it is the symbol of the district. Yeah, so for the district or Sipat, they call it gnome in Tamare or Egypt, as it was called. Yeah. So reasoning. In fact, let me. Is there any questions? I've been going on for so long, I forgot to ask questions. Any questions, Horemheb?
Yes, there is one question.
Go ahead.
This is from Sekemtat, and the question is: did Ninfish Ada Zadutwi land in Heliopolis, Egypt, from Sirius, and is that where the Anunnaki ties into our story?
So did Ningish Zida? Is that
no, it didn't say Zida. It's spelled Aida. I've never seen that, but and then it goes on to say Zadutwi land in Heliopolis, Egypt, from Sirius, and is that where the Anunnaki ties into our story?
No, they're two separate events. They're two separate events. So Ningish Zidia is a son of Inki and Hisat. Yeah, so that, in terms of the physical structure of his body that was born, that is from that side of the family. Whereas, let's say, the Houthi is from Sirius and connects to the Natharu from ancient Egypt. So when you talk about Anunnaki, when they first came here, around about 500,000 years ago, when you deal with the Natharu, you're dealing with millions of years ago. Yeah, so they're two separate individuals, but the stories of the two individuals, they correlate. Now, because we have the genes of both, as we mentioned earlier, I think we touched upon, time, I'll just maybe show you a map of what we're talking about. Let's say Inky mixed in with the. So let me just put. Okay. Yeah. So where Inky mixed in with those Sands people, you see that we have the nature of the two inside, and that's why they show you that Amenemhotep from one side, they show you from the Panatharu side, and then from the other side they show you Ninkashida all coming into the same being as the Amenemhotep, is so that the being, the ancestors put it that way, so the being would understand the nature of us in this day and time, of who is being taught. Yeah, so you need to know the nature of both the Anunnaki and of the Atharu genes, because, as I say, of that mixing in that took place. I'm trying to. Okay. So let's take you here. So this is. Just put that up. You can see that on the screen. Yeah, so this is this area in Google Earth, yeah, where Inky used some of the genes for those Bushmen in the Kalahari to help with their project to create this primitive worker, which effectively was them upgrading genus Homo to Homo erectus, then onto, let's say, Homo sapien. This part of the world. Let me just zoom out a little bit here. Yes, you can see this part of Africa. Yeah, we're talking about. So in one of the interventions, that's where there was a crossover into our genealogy. Okay, seems to be okay around the world there. That's where, it's one of the places where the Caucasian, in fact, was stored by the Pleiadians in a war that took place. I think it's recorded in the Quran. I think them stayed in the caves for 300 years. But where that was, certain of them, because they were sought to be wiped out by a war that took place, which is too long for us to go into in this day and time. But that's where they were stored. It was in the Caucasus Mountains, and in this place here in Turkey called Derinkuyu, or Cappadocia. This place called Cappadocia, a big underground city there, which you can look up in your own time. But let me try and get back to just show you. Yeah, so that's that place in Africa where they mixed in. So this is this evidence of these ancient stone ruins, and this is where Inky landed, as I say, in South Africa, which they call Abzu. Any other questions?
Yes. Den Amireye has asked, and I'm going to phrase this question as close as I can. He says, why is Germany, China, and the USA trying to put a false sun in the sky? I think when you were talking about suns, he's formulated that question, so he's put it forth.
Sorry, then Amire, I can't add to nothing about that. You have to send me the references. I'm not sure where that's from. This was to come on and state where that's from. I haven't got any information on that. Any other questions?
No more questions.
No other questions.
Okay, right. Just remind me, I went off a bit. I didn't take time for questions. Apologies, audience. Please just ask questions. I'll make more time for that. Yeah, let's just wrap it on a bit. Now, the reason, as I say, as you can see, the word reason breaks down as a son of Re, so another sun, repeat into this continual cycle where suns obviously are able to produce other suns that give birth to planets, etc. And there's different types of suns. Some are life-giving, others are not. But it ties back into this word reason, and this is the Safaf for Reye there, which is pronounced Ray. Falsely, some pronounce it as Ra, but Ra is close to the Hebrew word Ra'ah, which means disagreeable. Yeah, so just use the word Ray as in sun ray. Yeah, but you see it written as Ray and pronounced by those who know as Raye. So we've I think, done this to death many times in these classes to show you the connection between Sabatat, Sirius, and Sa'at, the Orion star constellation. And we explained earlier where two of your significant ancestors came from these star constellations. Obviously, male DNA came from male DNA came from Orion, and feminine DNA came from Sirius. So this is associated with Ashtat, the Greeks call Aset, and this constellation is associated with Asar, who they call Osiris. Yeah. So the original pyramid, I know you've heard me say this before, but the original pyramid is the Nagaru nose. That is your original pyramid, and connected to the eye on top of the pyramid that you see is our third eye. Yeah? So working with our two physical eye and our mind's eye, and tying into the pineal gland, understood, and our ability to process air or the breath. And obviously when we get into the class about 2 weeks' time, we're going into this in more detail. So ours is open, forcing that passageway up. Obviously, we listen to the right kind of tones and chanting, etc. That is obviously you're vibrating certain bones in our nose, which help to open up our third or mind's eye. Understood? And that's part of our reconnection. Yeah? Pyramids are interdimensional communication device insofar as being able to convert what you're calling outformation into information. Understood? Yeah. Being able to take advantage of, let's say, cosmic energy just being emitted from various different star constellations. So we are just using, at the moment, energy, understand how to use energy in this society from one sun, our sun, 93 million miles away. But what about then there's thousands, millions of suns out there? And our ancient ancestors were adept, being taught by the Parnatharu how to make use of and power some of our monuments, let's say, not only with the geo energies of the planet, i.e. The two poles, but also taking advantage of the various different star constellations that the planet's axis points to at various times of the year. Hence why we have a star map called the Dendora star map that was tracking these energies to make use of them. And at a certain point, they powered many of our monuments on the planet, as I said, until war took place around about 12,500 BC. Where a comet hit the planet, basically, and knocked the planet off its axis. And then it threw out, as I say, many of our monuments. So they would only switch on when the planet was rotated into a certain position. Understood? But it caused a lot of explosions, etc., on the planet. And we had to move for survival to other locations. Yeah? And that's going into, for more information on that, go to I Was There, which was here, part 1 and 2, part 2X. Now, so the Caucasian nose is closed or thin, which we were ridiculed for having big noses, but obviously that's because we were able to process the air or ether through our nose, which helps power. One of the ways in which helps power our soul, which is one of our souls, the Rawu soul, not the Ba'ah soul. More on that, say, next class. So their nasal passages are more thin, closed, which makes it difficult for them to breathe through the nose. An interest in nosology, look it up in the words, it's a science of disease. And you'll find out how the breath, poor breathing, has obviously held us back as a race. Poor breathing held us back and saying it's extremely sick. And we'll get into that, to say, in next week's class. So nosologist of nostalgia, this is a master refers to their answer, but it's basically saying the house of sickness. Yeah, breathing through the mouth is considered bestiality in our culture. Yeah, so it must breathe through the nose to allow the filtering process, as I say, not only to cool the air, but to take out all the impurities, etc., before you take it down into the vital organs. So these are some of the extraterrestrial symbols connected, and we went through this like in the previous class. They're connected to the Orion star constellation, where, say, Wu-Sabat and our ancestors, as I say, settled in these star constellations. I'm going to get into a story that takes us to a story, but an actual fact that explains how they got to these various different positions from there. So you see three symbols: water, sun, and earth here, Tamaray, in fact, symbols needed for life. And we explained how, from an extraterrestrial point of view, with those comets, how it brought life here to Earth in that regard, in its simplest form. Here you see the eye, and so the connection. The eye is the window to the soul, and we know the Sirius star constellation is the bridge between the 18th and the 19th galaxies. I'm not going to talk about that too much because we'll talk about that a bit later. So, again, we've touched upon these nun bowls, and Safaf, and this importance of space, matter, time, and matter. We get into some more technical classes, or more scientific classes throughout the year. It's going to be important to start to pick up these patterns. So one of the things is about this triad of principles in nature. Even when we do the breath, what do we have? In the breath, our primary colours. We've got red, yellow, and blue. Maybe for some of your homework, look at how many institutions, sports and different things use the two colours, blue and red. Blue and red, think what political parties, go on. Think about the boxing ring. So think about all the things where blue and red appears. So we can look at where that influence, really came from. But one of the things is these major triads. So we see here space, matter, and time. They are inseparable from each other. We cannot have one without the other. So this triad principle appears in our culture, and it helps you to understand existence and some of the symbolism that is being conveyed. So outformation is real for us. It's a real thing. We didn't even know there was an outformation. It's the master teacher had to point out that information has an opposite, but outformation informs your being, isn't it? And then we have beneath formation, which is beneath the waters, as we can see here. Where that influence, Nun science is coming from, that outformation is coming from, to help transform us, certainly from the state that we're in. So, as we talked about earlier, when we were looking at the picture of Ankh En Atun and Nafar Tweetwe, as their proper names, it's showing that we're receiving cosmic rays and energy, which is carrying information. And some of that, as I say, with those pyramid structures, remember the Muslims or those of Islam stole a lot of the coverings that were on those pyramids. How we're looking at them today is not how they were. They were all covered in crystalline materials. Quartz being one of the main ones which you use, and they were different colors: black, reds, you understand, yellows, etc. All different colors, primary colors. And so, like today, if you look up ultrasound and how that is used, basically, it's crystalline technology used in combination with sound to check or see a baby in the womb. It's the same technology of how the pyramids were used. So basically, the crystals store information. And even today, if you think about how your computer works, it's crystalline technology that is storing the memory within your computer. It passes electric current through it, and it's able to give up its secrets, similar to how we understood when we were to touch a certain crystal, because we've got electricity running through our body, we could force the crystal to give up its secrets to us, if you know how to read them properly. And there's people who claim to read crystals, but this is what you're seeing when you're dealing with some of our pyramid structures. They are they have many different functions, but one of their functions, they're a storage device, interdimensional communication storage devices. So it's able to give up certain information about, again, because certain things have taken place in the stars, they're destined to replicate themselves here on Earth. And so therefore, useful information, information comes to us in the form of information, can be conveyed and read in that regard. Yeah, how the universe is to be ordered. Yeah, these are the things that we were able to read and pick up in our higher state of mind, and must do so again for our survival in terms of our transition. Excuse me, our transition. Because the planet is moving through something called a dimensional shift, where the universe is changing its vibrational rate. It's moving to a higher form of vibration, a more positive form of vibration, and everything upon it, living or dead, must shift at the same time. If it's not in sync, then it will pass away and remain on those lower levels and above. So we also must transition and shift by raising our vibrational rate to be in tune with the sake of the planet's dimensional shift, as they refer to it, which happens every 24,000 years. Excuse me, any questions?
No
questions for Homehead? Matthew,
no
any
questions.
questions? Okay, any questions, Matthew? Matthew, yeah. Any questions? Okay, no problem. I'll continue then. So the 24,000 year cycle that we talked about, so we've shown this before, which within is four 6,000 year cycles. Yeah, starting off. So we go moon, sun, moon, sun, moon, sun. Yeah, so moon, sun, moon, sun. Yeah, so we end up with so yeah, moon, sun, moon, sun. No, so sun, moon. Sun, moon, sun, moon. No, starts off with moon first. I'm getting myself confused. Starts off with moon first. So we're moving into a sun cycle after this point in the last 24,000 year cycle. So 1970 was symbolic of that, moving into that cycle. Yeah, and here we see natural nature, yeah, of the Nagaru, natural nature, yeah, the Dravidians, natural nature of the Mugalu or the Asians or the Orientals. So basically, but then when we see here the made man, the grafted man, as I say, he was made by those Pleiadians and those Anunnaki in warfare. Yeah, the germ man, not German, the germ man, which is designed to disease their genome as the food source for the Draconians, because the Pleiadians were a food source for the Draconians. And they worked with Enki as one of the Anunnaki and Tar out of ancient Egypt to disease, in the real story, to disease the mitochondrial DNA within the German or Caucasian genome, because they were to be in the image and afterlife of the Pleiadians, to replace them as the food source for the Draconians. And they placed a disease in the genomes to kill off these flesh-eating extraterrestrials, and that caused a major war we were touching upon a little bit earlier, which caused some of them to be saved by their Pleiadians, and be placed in Cappadocia or Derinkuyu, those caves. And that is a significant underground. Go and look at, there's a couple of documentaries, I think, on Discovery Channel. I think it's called Underground Cities or Underground Mystery Cities, something like that, where you can see the kind of what was achieved in that regard. That's not necessarily just by human hands. So here, as we've shown you before, we get to from the Egyptian story, is that we, as ancient Egyptians, we witnessed the creation of the Hebrew God, and that's what they're referring to in their Bible in Revelation chapter 3, verse 14. It says, "These things saith the Ammon, the faithful and true witness," at the beginning of the creation of God. So the Ammon, or Ammon Ra, or Ammon Re, witnessed the creation of the Hebrew God. So we were around in prehistory, or our story, when his story came around, yeah, when he started to create things. And it's it is a coincidence that Revelation 3:14 also happens to be what? Yeah, and the number of pi, also tying into geometry of the earth, yeah, and then tying back into us. excuse me, as those master builders. Yeah, that's a moment to say, yeah, that's heavy in that regard. The master teacher, never ceases to amaze. Yeah, so this Amun is the Safof for Amun. It's referred to as the hidden one. And we'll get more into the symbolism of Amun as well next week when we deal with some of the colours with the breath scroll. So in 2 weeks' time, we deal with Amun and the breath scroll. But notice again here, Amun, you see that flow through of that symbol there, that water and symbol and tone symbol as well. Insofar as these 3 points here. Yeah. Notice this point here. Oh, I might say a bit here, middle, and then this lower part. Yeah. Sharps, flats, and majors. So, let's say his origin started when he started to write things down. A house time, let's say, started with the birth of our solar system. His time here, I think we call it 5.4 billion years ago, would be time starting here. Doesn't mean that's weird. You can't put a time on how old our species are or how races. It would just be, it'd be possible to do that in the same. We don't have a beginning in that regard. But as time started here in terms of recording would be 5.4 billion years ago, linked to a Big Bang, among many Big Bangs. His origin started, as we've expressed before, started writing with a pen. Unfortunately, that pen has been fueled with our blood as the ink. So, many things of his story is on the backs of our pain. It's fake story and fake origin that he has, because he's obviously ashamed of the fact that he was created, as I say, to be a weapon in somebody else's war or a disease in that regard, in terms of germ warfare, and he was effectively created to be food. Yeah, that's what he's hiding. That's what he doesn't want to tell the world, which is shown in that movie. I think it's called Prometheus. Basically, which is that story. Yeah, uncover, pick all the special effects or whatever. But that's their story. Yeah, Prometheus, and obviously when their so-called god, who they were trying to seek extended life, saw them. He said, "Hey, when he saw them, his first thing wasn't to say, 'Hey, how you doing? Welcome, my children.' His thing was to strangle them, kill them, break their necks, etc." That's how it showed in the movie. Anyway, yeah, and the alien in the movie is not the alien. The alien is the Caucasian race, a parasitical being that must live off of or mix in with people with stronger genes in order to survive. That is how their ancestors designed, their extraterrestrial ancestors or overlord designed them to be. And so the women were given not to be crass, but given larger vaginal cavity, and the men smaller phalluses, so that the men would be able to satisfy their females sexually, and therefore would have to seek out men of other races in order then to take in their genetics or genes. All this circumcision and all these different things or whatever, we start what Mars has been uncovering for several years, and you see that in the Patriarchs, just breaking down all this religious mythology and what was really going on in terms of why certain things were done. So as I said to you before, in one part of the Bible, a man used withdrawal techniques, let his semen splash on the floor, dead instantly. Saying Cain kills his brother. Okay, go and live over there with the other killers. You know what I mean? Once one gets off scot-free, one is killed instantly. Why? Because we don't want that behaviour, because that's taking out the food. Yeah, we stop human beings doing that, because that is stopping the food. That is stopping production, which is what their God instructs them to do. Go out there and replenish the earth, have lots of sexual relations or whatever, produce children, as part of the harvest. The word Tammuz in Ezekiel, 8:14, it means harvest. Its name means harvest. The one or the Lord that they're appointed to say in Genesis 4, I think 26, if memory serves me correctly. So, Here, let's say our connection to the sun, and so the sun, as you see here, has bigger, much bigger brothers. And we see Sirius there. We see some of these stars, Betelgeuse, obviously part of the Orion star constellation. So tremendous insights. So maybe in someone's religion, certainly worthy of worship. In ours, it's a case of, or our story, it's a case of we are connected to them. You can't outlay them. I see there was an article this week, I think one of the scientific magazines, where they were describing or trying to ascertain whether the sun now has consciousness. It's very funny in this day and time. You see a lot of the stuff that the master teacher was writing 20 years ago, things in the holy tablets, the black book and things of that nature, now all of a sudden seem to be scientific discovery after scientific discovery is just confirming what was written 20 years. So to us as Sabians, that information is out of date. But to them, it's being confirmed. So they talk about the sun having, or experiments to see whether the sun has consciousness, whether it's making decisions, and obviously we know that to be true. It having intentions being high, it's a burning ball of gas on an inanimate object. The way it is controlling of one of the architects, let's say, of creation as a creator. So that fourth cycle, which it shows here, is not the final cycle. We're moving in to that fifth cycle. In their calendar, it's the last of those 1,000 years of the 49,000 years that we talked about in the last class. Yeah, but it's also the first 1,000 years of the new 24,000 year cycle. And so we've got this an apex happening, which we'll get into in a bit, with the rise of the woman back to power, which would take around about 6,000 years to reach its apex. So we're moving that into this fifth cycle. So at the fourth cycle, remember, if you do 4 times 24, what number did you get? Right, so if you do 4 times 24, for those doing that on the calculator, I'll give you a few seconds to do that. So you see 4 times 24 is 96. So it's where those two forces of Nupu and Zupu meet. Understood? Yeah, where the 9 and the 6 clash in terms of opposing force. So the 9, there's a renewal taking place right now. So a number of different cycles are culminating to an apex at the same time. Yes, there's a renewal taking place of our story. Hence, this Amanubia Akata, as I say, coming at this descended time to usher in this new cycle. It started under the site of Khaf Raye or Kepre, who is shown with the body of a human, as I say, and the head of a scarab beetle. The scarab beetle, as I say, was thought to push the sun over the sky, the same way, as I say, and the reason I show his head, because the master teacher, or Kepre, is transforming our mind, yeah, from right knowledge to right wisdom to right understanding, leading to a right overstanding, giving us back sound right reasoning once again. So we see the various different triad principles come into the fore, and the reason why I was showing about those cycles is because we have to have a different understanding of time. And so in these triad principles, you have this then, now, then, which is showing you then. So we have then, multiple thens, which is considered to be in our past, and multiple thens or events, which is considered to be our future. So remember, time is time. If you reverse the word, it's really the word emit. They've been talking about time starting, or our time is linked to the sun, understood, in terms of, yeah, the planet revolving around the sun, so on and so forth, and the moon revolving around the planet, and then revolving around each other, so on and so forth. That is how time is recorded. But when we think about time is a set of incidents which have taken place within this environment called existence. So we can say, yes, time is logged. So we said class, for example, start at 1 o'clock. So you need to be on the call at 1 o'clock, obviously UK time. But obviously, in allowing people to jump on and get settled, jump on a call, class actually started at 1:15. So it's the event that sets it, not the time on the clock. So the event is what's logged in, i.e., boom, we're ready to start or whatever, or Partak Yud. That's the start of class, not the time as they record it on the clock, which obviously goes in the opposite direction of how it works seemingly in nature, because obviously the sun goes from east to west, which is anti-clockwise direction, as the illusionary appears to some extent on Earth, whereas the clock goes in the opposite direction, because those controlling the time are going anti-nature, because the clock for them, or the wheel of time in existence, goes clockwise, where it goes anti-clockwise for us. Understood? Yeah. So evolution to them is death. Yeah. Ours is you had an R at the end, and you get revolution for us, yeah, which is the 9 cycle. So I think somebody, Dr. Kentu Ironhouse said to me one time, we've gone from building pyramids to building spliffs. Yeah, so obviously evolution to us doesn't mean to go forwards, understood, yeah, and obviously when we get to that point where we're building spliffs instead of pyramids, then a revolution takes place in the cycle, yeah, where the forces of 9 ether pull up from that lower part of the circle and pull those forces up, to start that revolution. But it starts with the mind first. So the force of 9 ether visit the minds of the posterior, the minds of the descendants first. Now, in our perception of that is our understanding of time. So here, then, now, then, so now is really the time. We have multiple then to the past, multiple then to the future. But it's the 3-in-1 principle, as it's outlined here. And so you see this pattern or patterns throughout nature, throughout our story. It's something you have to grasp onto and see these patterns. We're starting to read these books, study them, pull them apart, go through it, etc., these classes, and really start to understand who and what we are, and then the symbolism that ancestors left to help us to understand, as I say, what is actually going on in the environment we're in. So you see, soul, body, spirit, birth, growth, death, there, here, there, up, here, down. It's all the same thing. Yeah, see, and nature works in that kind of so perceived opposites, and then you've got this kind of thing, this middling point. Yeah, hot, cold, and what's the middling point? That's correct. Yeah, warm. So we see this 3-in-1 principle, yeah, as from the root of it, yeah, of space, time, and matter, which the 3 are is you cannot separate them; they must unnecessary for existence to take place. Yeah. And we see that in our species, yeah. So, as male, female, and child, yeah, or some say 1, 3, 5, so on and so forth. So here, better understandings are all happening at the same time. Because when you say tomorrow, so when it gets to 12 o'clock and you say it's tomorrow, what has happened? Yeah, and so when you start to think about it, what has happened? Does tomorrow, I don't know, does it erase yesterday? You know what I mean? What's happened? So the clock passes that thing. What happens in reality? We're just calling it tomorrow, isn't it? We're just calling it that. That's what we call it, or put a name on it. That something's happened. Obviously, that's the system that we use. But what's happening in reality in nature? No, the expansion, depending on where you are, or contraction, if the sun's dying or in dying phase, yeah, it's taking place. So tomorrow is still out there. It's already out there. We just ain't got there yet. The same way, yesterday is still out there. We haven't got there yet. Yeah, and if you think about yourself as a universe, where did you as a 9-year-old go? All that's happened is that you've expanded, isn't it? It's different layers. The 9-year-old is still in there somewhere, as are the experiences of that 9-year-old. If our memories worked even better, but we can jump, isn't it, at any point back to certain points of the past. The same way we can seemingly imagine or seek to imagine or throw ourselves into what is to take place into the future. So we have that experience, or people have that experience called deja vu. But here he's saying what? You are a three-dimensional being ready to experience the fourth you, or the etheric you. So we know that we're trapped within person, places, and things. That's this thing that's part of the spell that we're trapped in. We're trapped in nouns, can't think outside of that, which is why the Sabaic language is important for us to expand our thinking, to expand our imagination, to expand our vocabulary. There's many things maybe that the master wants to express, but the English language is so limited, it dumbs us down. And you know, or some of you be aware, that the Nawapic language is what? It's a three-part verb. Yeah, three consonants. All the words is based on three-part verb. Yeah, again, linking back into nature. Yeah, to keep you in sync, frequency, vibration. So, what's it saying? 9 to 9th power of 9, or 999, overpowers calculations and maps to the highest number. It says, know your third eye or pineal gland in the center of your brain, between the two halves of your gateway. Once you learn how to activate it, it produces your melatonin, the master secret, which was the secret of your divine being. So, excuse me. So it's interesting, as I say, let's just get a bit closer here, that, again, this triad principle, or those three eyes that we're talking about, now need to work in sync in these latter days to open up, let's say, excuse me, the doorway for the world we're in into other worlds. Yeah, open up our mind's eye. Yeah, and the pineal gland helps us to sink in with different dimensions. Yeah, so. And it's our understanding in terms of the way it vibrates. So a person knows they're on the physical. If they was aware, they would know they're on the physical plane, because their pineal gland is vibrating in sync with the vibration of the environment we're in. In a sense, it keeps us in sync in time, whatever, with the environment, the physical environment we're in. Yeah. So everything, no matter how small, large, the atoms are vibrating at the same vibrational rate. They refer to it as nutation. Yeah. So here, the master of time is the pineal gland. The Harco as pine cone. Pine from Latin pinus, evergreen tree with cones and needle-shaped leaves. Pineal body, Latin pina, from pine cone, a small cone-shaped body in the brain that produces a hormone. On this subject, there is much more to know at the right time to the right ones of you. You only. So note that Anunnaki always hold up a pine cone. So I haven't shown a picture of this, but if you look it up, Anunnaki, pine cone, you see them holding it. The evergreen tree, remember, is evergreen, so superior to the cycles, correct? So it's not going through summer, winter, spring, so on and so forth. It maintains its strength throughout. So it's here, obviously, before those death cycles had effect on certain species to cause it to decay, destroy, so on and so forth, yeah? Which at one time the planet was separated into red and green zones, yeah? So carnivorous animals were in one zone, whereas herbivorous animals and human beings were in another zone, kept separate from each other, understood, to manage the ecosystem more effectively on the planet. So here, the pine cone, you see them holding it in their hands, and that's showing their ability to direct the power of the third eye on certain objects, whether that's moving, telekinesis, and so on and so forth. So we have many great powers, but obviously those secrets must be conveyed, certain time mouth to ear, which is why in ancient Egypt and even certain points today, you were put into sacred orders to show that you are worthy. It's not about somebody mastering or giving certain secrets to master in nature. Then, you know what I mean? They're on X Factor, or they're on Britain's Got Talent. You understand? Showing, hey, look at me. You understand how wondrous I am? It's all about ego. No, those powers and to be conveyed, one has to show a certain level of worthiness to obtain them. And so the Natharu well know the mindset of human beings, certainly who have been influenced with Anunnaki genes or DNA, what they could be capable of if they got their hands on certain types of power. Yeah. So let's look into this grand plan about what happened basically, and how were these ancient Egyptians, why were they influenced, what's going on, and what's its connection to the Cyrus star system, etc. Why does it mean so much to our people and to us? So here, this is out of a book called Tones, DNA, Vibrational Energy, actual facts number 18. So let's walk through some of the verses here. So it says, only mind can perceive subatomic structure as those of ether and mind, therefore must be outside the brain. In fact, so any questions before I move on to this session? I'm about to switch to something else. Any questions?
Right. There's no questions on my side.
No questions here neither.
No questions. Okay. All right. Let's move forward. Still plenty to get through today.
Oh, just a second.
Go ahead.
Yes, we do have one. There was a symbol of the three flags, and it says the questions from Second Tat. How as Sabaeans can we use our symbol, e.g., the three flags?
How can you use it? Interesting question. I mean, symbols are really designed to, I suppose, keep knowledge away from the fall. That's why we speak, and certain things were moved in symbolism. I suppose if you're using it, you just have to show respect. You know what it is. You know what it relates to. When you see it, it's going to invoke in you. If you accept them for whom what they are, it's going to evoke in you a positive mindset and a positive mentality. How it's used in terms of combination of putting it on things, or whether when it's placed on something, it induces protection and things of that nature. There is a science connected with those things, but that would be taught through the Masonic orders within Wu-Sabat. So the Order of the Eastern Stars for the females, and Order of the Blue House for the males. So you have to seek entrance into those to learn about that. On into the higher things, because just learning about those Euro Masonic into our stuff called Ba'h B'ah Yaanuwn, which is referred to as the elite ones, or END, elite Nuwapian degrees. So that's the higher echelon of that, where the power of those tones and certain those symbols and how they're used would be uncovered to those who are worthy. So, but for now, see it, you know what I mean, use it as a symbol, associate it, or train your mind to associate that symbol with the sun. Yeah, and so you connect those two things at least together. In that regard, your pathway to connect with the Natharu as well. Obviously, we know they exist, the suns are there, but it's through your Salafu as well. So acknowledge and respect that pathway. So, verse 100. So it says, only mind can perceive subatomic structure as those of ether and mind, therefore must be outside the brain. Mind is a power created by higher beings and made part of human experiences called mental. All right, so some heavy stuff here. Yeah, so when we say mind, remember we are saying mind with an E. M-I-N-E, mind. It's your portion of the mental reservoir, that you are connected with. Obviously, your brain interprets that information, and maybe one class we'd have to go through and show about the newts and what thoughts really are, and the transition, etc., as it connects to space, matter, and time. It's quite interesting, but we have to take our time with that one because it's quite complicated. Newts, brain newts, N-O-O-T, brain newts, and the liquefaction, as I say, of energy into matter, and how to say that descends into what's called the brain. But for the purpose of this, I say that connection, or that stable state where we're all feeding in to this mental reservoir of information, so no one's getting any new thoughts, it's only rehashed of things that have been thought before. All that connection to it was created by, as I say, higher beings. Yeah. And maybe I should have probably put a diagram of that, but we've got that. Maybe we can try and do that for another class if you haven't seen it before to make that a bit clearer. Yeah. So, now, bear in mind, 101, bear in mind, Musbatu, that the resonance of the planet Earth we call Patanun is the same 040 hertz spectrum as the human mind, 102. Your same mind linked to the mental abode that is constantly emitting signals into the environment. Around these signals are much more than just waves. They become also particles, that is matter. Yeah. And light is one of those as well. So light is one of those particles moving in darkness. The vibrational, the reason why it moves in waves is because it's affected by dark matter, which also restricts its speed as well to 186,272 miles per second. Now, 103, just as you see the Najumat stars, Najumat in the night sky as little lights flickering, billions of light years away, 104, and light is how far light can travel in 1 year, be it solar, 365, or lunar, 354. As light travels at a speed of 186,274.5 feet per second, that makes 1 light year around 6 trillion miles away from Earth. Yeah? Some say 5.8. Now 105, as that's rounded up, yeah? So 105, and Najumat or stars are billions of light years away. 106, many of these Najumat are no longer there when you look up at the night sky. They are stars that have died, so people recognize that the light emanating from that when we see it, because light is traveling from that distance. Sometimes those stars are no longer alive. They're no longer there anymore. They've exploded or burnt out, etc. So 107, yeah, and still you can see Nawar, the light. 108, you now know this light to be wave matter particle. We just explained that about the dark matter. 109, you also know by seeing a light now that it died years ago, yet it continued life of that Najum that you see. 110, you yourself, as part of the laws of chaos, Isfut, and order, Ma'at, are no different from those stars. You are made up of the exact same atoms, cells, elements of light, life, energy. Yep, which would obviously be expressed about sticking at home in terms of the Black Egypt part of this class, so to speak. 111, and you are putting out signals which will continue as wave matter particles even after you have died. Each of you have a zero time reference of existence unique to each one. So your zero time, so basically a person's zero time reference is different to the date when they are born. So the zero time reference is when you are stamped in time with an existence, and you need to know or need to reference that because that is your real entry point, and effectively it is used in certain spiritual practices. So, for example, in order to they talk about the dimensional shift, for example, that the zero time reference is extremely important because your existence is being recorded on a continuance liner, so to speak, on what they refer to an arad or a dice disc. Yeah? Also referred to by Sumerians as a me stone. So everything that you do, thought, think, food, everything you did is recorded on this disc, an etheric kind of disc or me stone, which links to that zero time reference. So your zero time reference happens when the sperm and the ovum come together. Yeah, that's your Big Bang. That's your imprint in nature, which is different to your birth. So when your birth, that's the one is the real time, they refer to as real time, and then one is fake time because obviously you've already been in existence. And the fake time, when your birth and you come out of the womb, where you're already in existence for, well, in some cases, 9 months from conception. You had 3 months, again, for the mental side of it, which is referred to as inception. So that's your zero time references. As each Huminu and Mimu has their own zero time reference. Once a sound is made, never really dies, only changes volume or vibrational tone. So if you imagine, boom, that big bang happens, big bang between microscopic entities, yeah? The sound, that vibration doesn't stop. It goes out there, you know what I mean, into the universe, travels. It just maybe loses, let's say, who can hear it? But the sound still remains. That's what that's talking about there. It says all of creation of life is life waves that pass down in vibration to Hemenu, Ogdoads, underwater soundness, to the Sabthetu, Enneads, to come out on land. So in our story, we have to understand, and the Ogdoads of the 8 also ties into the referred to as the word's gone from my head for the moment. Octaves, octaves of sound, I remember the scale as well. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. So these systems of 8, it ties back into our system because we started off in the waters as mermen and merwomen. That's the Ogdoad phase. And then we came out onto land in the Enneads phase. So that's 8, tone of 8. On into the 9 points, because when you deal with the Enneads, there was 9 deities within the Enneads, the same as we spoke about last time. The sperm, you cut the tail of the sperm, you see those 9 centrioles or tubes that basically verse the energy into one form to create the sperm cell. You understood? So that is the 9. We came out onto land as 9. So it's 9 points or 9 energies. Understood? And if you think about it, there was 9 etheric beings that of the Murazaku that helped to create our race, which has 9 different 9 ethers or physical ethers or speech or subsets within the race. From this high yellow to blue, black. There's 9 different species within our race. So we go from 8 water creatures to 9, obviously on land, we're still breathing water, but not say dense form of water, we call it water vapor, but it's still water. So we get to the breath class next week and find out that one of the things is that our lungs obviously must remain wet. We are water creatures ultimately. Yeah. So these waves of creation, as I say, it's talking about there, created the Ogdoads on into the Enneads. As part of this divine plan. So something has taken place in another location, understood, and then that vibrational rate has impacted the divine plan of creation here. So there's an echo, almost in a sense, taking place, which helped formulate life here on Earth. Now, what does it say here? It says now it goes back about 9 billion years to another abode called Sabthetat, Sirius star system. It had 3 major suns, Sirius A, Sirius B, and Sirius C. Yeah, so remember now, the Dogon had star maps of the Sirius star constellation. I think Europeans only recently, through modern day instrumentation, I think about the 19th century, discovered star maps where they even was able to perceive Sirius. Dogons had Sirius A, B, and C. Sirius C is difficult to see because it's now dead star, which we're going to get into, that doesn't exist. So Sirius is considered to be a binary star system, but obviously this is expecting there used to be a tri-star system in that regard. So Sirius C had 3 major suns. On the last Sirius C, that abode, the beings had reached such heights they did not need their vast technologies. Most of those beings were past the need of rebirth, and others of them were already transformed into Etherians, moved on to the mental abode. Yeah, so you understand, we've got obviously, we start physical, plane of force, spiritual, and then we jump up to number 4, we go mental. Yeah, it's a different environment or planes of existence planes within existence. So 140, it says the necessity for a physical form or body on any vibrational level was below their needs. No need of a physical instrument to play the tone or sound of their music. Body was obsolete. 115, because of the ability of the state inhabitants to precipitate their needs from the ethers. So these individuals now were able to live off of energy or ether, as opposed to how we now need to require sustenance derived from nutrients from food, and so on and so forth, and obviously water as well, which is essential to that process for not only absorption but expulsion of waste products, so on and so forth. So must have water in the system, and oxygen also plays part of that. But these individuals now, no need for the body, can derive, as I say, what they need from ethers. So after 116, after 9,000 more years, except for those beings of that boat who lagged too far behind to attain transformation, the many Etherians from that star system, Sirius C, of Sabdetat, advanced in one moment, with all the higher beings of all the other abodes being one with the universe, on to the fourth abode of existence. 170. Those lagging beings who had to remain behind were deprived of every iota of higher levels or becoming Natharu, because their attachment to the physical things of their world, just as those here on Ptah Nun will also be left behind because of their physical attachments to their bodies, lust and material things, greed, food and pleasures. 118. Others who raised fell and were returned to the lower levels, trapped and lost in worlds unknown to their inner being, and are host to be held in abeyance to the world they are in now, and can be used and abused emotionally by lower forces of etheric abodes. So this is explaining that in one fell swoop, obviously, these beings transitioned to higher abodes or higher level of thinking, to the fourth abode. And because they were connected to beings of their same species who were too material, obviously it was causing them some issues. So one behavior of that species, because they're interconnected etherically, it can affect those of higher realms, because it's like an etheric umbilical cord that we're all connected to, obviously by race. You understand? So behaviors here can affect higher abodes, but obviously saying that some of us were trapped in lower abodes where, as I say, their being was then able to be used and abused by lower forces, like, as I say, which can happen to us from 6 ether below all the way down to 0 ether and beyond. So here, 119, looked over by the Chebetu of the 4th to the 3rd abode, spiritual mental abodes. Some have access to the 5th abode, who originally took part in the creation of the lower abodes down to the 1st abode. So we talked about this. So mental 4, I think divine truth at 5, and we read earlier about higher beings creating our mental reservoir, what we tap into in terms of mind, locked in. So interesting enough, we find ourselves today speaking through a similar collective network, isn't it, called the internet, which the equivalent to your mind is your router, correct? Your router that you have in your house is dropping you in to this collective kind of memory bank, where through those through your internet provider and the servers, you're feeding in and you are exchanging information through different nodes within the network, depending on what it is you're trying to access or find out, so on and so forth. There's an information exchange taking place that we're all obviously sharing and we are connected to. So no surprises which was influenced the design of this internet. Now, 120. Now, and can come down to the physical abode. So let's read that again. So 119, look over by the Chebetu of the fourth to the third abode, spiritual and mental abodes. Some have access to the fifth abode who had originally took part in the creation, of the lower abodes down to the first abode, physical abode. Yeah. 120, and can now come down to this physical abode and transform beings to higher levels. Yeah. Others are lost, in time will dissolve, as did Sirius C, which collapsed into nothingness. And the lower beings there were sent to other planets like here. 121. Their Natharu moved up to the fourth and fifth celestial abodes, and they disintegrated the Sirius C star system about which many planets had revolved. Look at this here. They disintegrated it. So basically, some of these higher life forms, remember, had what? They had transitioned, but they were still linked to these beings of the lower abode, to material, yeah, lust, etc. Boy, I can't do that on my phone, you know. Yeah, I mean, that kind of, you know what I mean? Couldn't leave it behind. Yeah, so when obviously that soul transitions, it cannot be connected to things of this world. This is why they say sometimes you just have to experience it. Like if you like the Porsche or whatever car, best to get it and, you know what I mean, get the desire of it out of your system. Because once you drive it, it's like, oh, well, it's not as, you know what I mean? It's the desire of it burns out, so to speak. So that's one way to burn out the desires. Yeah? So your soul can't be attached to things here because the energy of it will hold that ascension, or hold you here, or draw you back to the things which are here. Hence why, you know, our ancestors were continually taking care of things now to be able to prepare for what is to come, the next world, so on and so forth. So, and that means by facing death and taking care and handling things when death happens, so that you're ready. You know what I mean, whatever it is, life insurance, different bits and pieces or whatever. You need to have certain things. Make sure you have your will in place. You die in unexpected circumstances, you ain't got to stress out because, okay, well, emotionally there's a problem, but at least whatever, I've put plans in place for people to be taken care of. If you don't do that, and obviously you're sitting there in this sort of limbo spiritual state, obviously seeing that your family's struggling and stressed, it's going to make you feel stressed, you know what I mean? So how can then you focus on how can you then focus on ascending? You know what I mean? Your whole thing is going to be, well, I need to go back and try and do this better. I've messed up, whatever the case may be. So you want to be free of those things as and when you leave. You understand? And all types of attachments can hold you here. Love, even certain things or whatever, can hold you here. So one has to at some point separate the spiritual from the physical, understood, and prepare for where we're going next without being emotionless about things, but obviously care and love obviously maybe have to be interpreted in slightly different ways in terms of what we're attached to, in the way in which we're attached to things. Now it says they moved up to the celestial and disintegrated, so they basically collapsed his sun. Yeah, they collapsed it because they didn't want the connection of these individuals who were connected to them etherically influencing and poisoning those higher etheric abodes. So they collapsed the gateway from where they had ascended to where they were linked to and destroyed this massive sun in the process of doing so. So it says, leaving Sirius B and Sirius A. Many of the higher beings from them came here to Tarnun, the planet Earth, or the blue planet, or water planet. Others went up to Sahu, Orion star systems. Yeah, so some of our ancestors, we now placed, because of this event, got ancestors coming from or relocated to Orion, and some in Sirius. The same was done before throughout the universe, so that all the stars and their attendant planets ceased to exist. Time, because it is a function of matter on the physical abode, came to an end, while others are being born. So it's a continual ending and rebirth. So Suns will explode, overstood, wipe out their environments, and then the matter of that is then used to reform other universes, much like I say, what the woman does in terms of giving birth to human beings. She recycles the dead skin cells of other human beings, which are around, and use that to build the flesh on the baby that she's seeking to give birth to. Now, 1, 2, 1, 2, 4. Again, all these things vibrate on their own level. Each color vibrates. Each form of matter vibrates atoms and cells. 1, 2, 5. All is sound and music. There's good for you sounds or music, and there's bad for you sounds, tones, and or music. Even the sound of a person's voice can upset you. 1, 2, 6. Your given name or title is a tone or sound of music that is vibrating. It becomes you or you become it, and it links you to that vibration and all forces and beings on that same tone, sound, name, be they good or evil. That is why speaking in your own language, Sabaik, is so important to your being. The names or attributes you call on as deity to come and affect your well-being. So obviously you're aware that your name, that you're given, we talked about big and little name in the last class, so go and check part 2 of history. But that tone is unique to you and ties in, as I say, to that big bang that happened when the sperm hit the ovum. It ties into the kind of music you like. But it's your individual vibration, overstood. But obviously when somebody calls, I don't know, whatever, Paul, all of the Pauls, living and dead, can be attracted to that sound, or that tone. Yes, so people have the same sound or tones, whether positive or negative. Understood? So this is why names or unique tones are important. And so we were continually, or names would continue where attributes, different attributes would be added to your name. And then your real name, you didn't give up that tone, thus you be controlled in this world and the next. So that language of Sabaik is basically retuning us back to our ancestors who exist only on the higher states at 7, 8, and 9 ether, where it's only agreeable forces. Those higher states help us to tune us back in. And when we were on those higher states, we couldn't be got by those lower forces. Which is at one time a planet where we lived separate lives. It mean we didn't interact with each other, but we didn't live amongst each other in that particular way to avoid this kind of up and down or dropping of vibrational rates. We need to stay constant in sync with 9 ether. Now it says each race is a genetic code vibration. You cannot be other than what and who you are. This is what we've been talking about. Can't choose your religion. Can't choose it. You are what it is according to your genes. You are who you are according to your genes. You can only change your what? Only in actions, not in true energy levels. So to pretend to be Mongoloid or any of its sub-races will not work for your being, or Dravidian, or any of the Indian sub-races, or Caucasians, or any of their sub-races will not vibrate for you, nor their system of beliefs, religions, cultures, way of life, or work for, or help you in any way. So the way nature's system is set up, that is how it is. You are linked to your ancestors through your genetics and your genes. That ties into your spiritual side, the world of energy, and that links you to them. And they basically, we'll get into that one. So 1, 2, 8. The adverse forces of all others is not for you and will kill your energy. 6 ether beings are adverse to 9 ether beings or you negroids. 1, 2, 9. They ascended up in this material or physical world by tone, sound, music, names, titles, and then linked to sound. The Caucasians decide which music becomes hits. He will pay the Negroid to make sounds that will cut them off or make them kill. He will only allow sounds or tones which he can use against you. If you don't make what he wants or needs, if he likes the look, take your tracks and reproduce them and add tones. He would choose Negroes who hate self and kind to become companies and give them sub-labels. Shoot videos or cinemas that will cause that will help his cause and destroy your minds and children. He loves gospel, hip-hop, but hated reggae or African music. So no Negro movie star or rapper or producer is there because they are good, not at all. He will only pay them big money if they further his plans of opening up the underworld and giving over Negro souls to Shazumu, the carnivorous flesh eaters. Once on this abode, they move by emotions through existing beings, open to them by emotions of many kinds, the way the music makes me feel. 130, and you know negroids were first humanoid created, I should say humanoid, created or incarnated or materialized on this abode, 131, so they vibrate with natural nature. So how this works, I should have put up, maybe we'll do it next time, but the wheel of time and existence. So imagine a clock with 9 at the top, 6 where the 3 o'clock would be, and at the bottom you see a 3. So this is the wheel of time and existence, and it basically describes how 9 ether goes from 6 ether to ghost and then revolves back around again over a 72 million year period. So it describes how life evolves within existence. Understood? But at the lower point of the circle, which is the ghostational forces of free ether, remember there is another circle below it which goes from 2, 3, 1 down to 0. And that is referred to as the lower cipher or Lucifer. Understood? And basically, because we are here on this physical abode as physical and also etheric or spiritual beings, we pull up those lower forces through our through our wishes and desires. Because when a person wishes or they desire something, they become a wanted. They open up themselves or their being to become a wanted. And it allows any force then to fulfill that request. So this is what it's making reference to here. We pull up because they don't have a carnal body to interact with the physical world. And if you understand about this, why it's saying about tones and vibrations, you have to understand not everything in existence as you can see. Remember, human beings are only seeing between 400 to 700 nanometers. It's a very small part of the electromagnetic scale. In terms of sound, what we hear, we're only hearing between 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz for normal range of human being. So elephants, bats, dogs even can hear outside of those ranges. So if they don't exist in your measuring sphere, 400, 700, you won't see them. They could be in the room with you, you don't see them. Because they're vibrating outside of what, using our eyes, or the way we've been taught to use our eyes at least, can see. So what it's saying is through our desires, they say we pull them up into this abode and then give them carnal existence by working through us. As they showed you in that film, I think it was the Matrix or whatever, not that this doctrine is about movies, but it shows you that film, The Matrix, where the person went from the digital world, isn't it? He transitioned over into the physical world, but he needed a vehicle or a vessel in order to do that. And he started causing havoc, killing people, this kind of stuff that they was doing, that madness, which happens every day when people are, well, not every day now because we're all in lockdown, but it used to happen every Friday night, isn't it? Where, what were pubs called? Jinn meals. And a jinn is a mythological creature in the spirit creature in the Islamic religion, isn't it? But it's called jinn. What are those drinks called? They're called spirits because they lower the person's vibrational rate down, where they can be housed by lower forces who seek to cause chaos, to enrich or empower 6 ether forces of death and chaos. Understood? So we bring them up for our desires. There's another class we did. Maybe we'll go through it. If you look at, I think the film's called Devil's Advocate. Look at the speech that Satan, played by, what's the actor's name? Just lost my head for a second. Al Pacino. Satan, played by Al Pacino, who's Nana in the movie or whatever. And the speech he gives at the end is quite interesting, what he used in terms of them pumping up human beings to make them have certain desires for things. Yeah, which in reality, you know what I mean, we get stressed out about a lot of things, especially when we were young growing up. They had no basis or meaning really in reality about, you know, having the latest trainers and this, that, you know what I mean? Some things we were going on like it's life and death, but now you're older, you see it didn't really mean nothing. You understand? But at that time it did. And so and what it causes people then to do in order to get those things. Yeah, and all the justification that people make. Well, I didn't have nothing when I was growing up. So, yeah, all that's that journey of desire and fulfilling those desires starts. Nothing got anything to do with one's spiritual development, but it's been orchestrated that way, understood, yeah, to allow or give energy, as I say, to these adverse or these lower forces. Remember, when we die, the white light is a light that our being would pass through. When they say white light, go into the white light is basically to enable us to reincarnate, to live life again through our same bloodline, through our body, to try and burn out some of the errors or mistakes we made. So 24,000 times. The multicolored light, which they don't talk about, multicolored light is for residual haunts or events where a person in life, a situation might happen where it's like major regrets. So there was a kind of fork in the road, an A decision or B decision. And basically you went down, you chose the B one through no fault of your own, could be bad advice, persuasion or whatever. And your life just went, whatever, there's a certain word I won't swear, but it went wrong as a result of that decision. So when you go through so that creates a glitch in your matrix, yeah, on that Narad disk, the me stone that we were talking about, it has to be resolved. So the option is there, potentially, don't always guarantee, but the option is there to go through the multicolored light, and then they put you back, will put you back at that point, and you'll be there again, and then you'll feel like, okay, well, I should choose the A option in your kind of inner being. I should choose that A option and go down that route, and then what the B route, the negativity then would be erased, yeah, from that point onwards. So, but for them, they don't go on. This is why to higher, and then there's option obviously to go to higher abodes of existence if you have developed yourself, your inner being. This is powerful enough to make those transitions, but they don't make that transition for them as to caucus. So as they go through the white light and basically exist in those lower planes as specters, ghouls, ghosts, discarnate entities, etc. And it can exist there for up to 1,000 years. When they transition, it's only out of that state or abode, it only transitions them into existence where they then dissipate into nothingness, which we read about some of the beings doing up there. Understood? So they become those discarnate forces, understood, which are there, as I say, seeking to plague the world, to empower sixth ether with more strength. Yeah, the forces of death and decay. These are the things the Master Teachers are covering in terms of the knowledge of universal things that we should be aware of, that was long held from us about understanding. You understand? They said the spell was what? Spiritual ignorance and racial blindness. They're not knowing who the evil one is in their many forms which they come in. Yeah. So Sahu and Sabdet. So interesting enough. So our ancestors, I mean, hopefully it's not too complicated. Our ancestors cut off the pathway that connected them to. So cut off the higher beings, yeah, who had evolved and evolved to these higher states of existence. They cut off the lower forces in one swoop. So the question is, well, how are we then to reconnect with them? Okay. Any questions?
I've got a question here from Sekemtat. Where is our me stone? Is it something inside of us?
Yes. I'm gonna, because I'll refer you to Should I refer to you to a class so you can learn more about it? Seek out a class called Inner Being. Yeah, they also refer to it as magnetic points. Yeah, so a class called Inner Being. Yeah, if you haven't got it, then seek to contact us. But yeah, seek out a class called Inner Being by the Master Teacher for more information on that. Any other questions?
I've got a question actually. You were talking about the pine cones earlier on.
Yes.
And there's actually a giant statue of a pine cone in the Vatican, and one on the Pope's staff.
Yes.
Is there a link between those and what you were talking about?
Yes, tied in with the Anunnaki. Seek out a book called The Lotus of Life. It has those pictures in there and a breakdown of what it means. Yeah, it's homework. So they're depicted with the Anunnaki. That doesn't mean that they originate from that. They're depicted with the Anunnaki, yeah. So the pine cones, but it goes into that in that book. Any other questions?
No other questions. I've answered 2 questions, one was on our light years measured by feet or feet per second or miles per second, but it's miles per second.
It can be both. So obviously, obviously on Earth in our environment, then in a vacuum, then it's in a vacuum. Then obviously within this environment, it's too small for miles, isn't it? Obviously in space. You can see it expressed as miles per second as well. So you see it both ways. Okay,
right. I answered the person's question. Legal update. Somebody's asked a question about a legal update. I'll put that it's on USA time.
That's not for the topic for this class, but there is a legal update if you can help them to. There's a family meeting I think later today, so if you can find the link and post it to them, then that would help them out in that regard. Just need to register for that. That's later on today. All right, let me move through this now because I've got time left. Right, so thoughts from that into this is that what happened? Yeah, so we've been cut off, or certain people of our within the race have split. So some have, let's say, transitioned to these higher states of existence or being, and then they've cut off the link because they don't want these lower carnal people of their race adversely influencing these kind of higher abodes. Understood? Once they're said mastered, not needing a physical body to exist, they were, as I say, living or had able to derive what they needed from ethers, from different types of ethers, energy, so on and so forth. And maybe in another class we'll go into those universal ether, natural ether, helper ether. There's different types which to go into in some other classes. Now, we're going into the story of Ashtat, Isis, now, and Re. That's a very famous story in our culture, but not obviously much known to necessarily to our people. Look at this and see some things why it's relevant. So it says, so this is Ashtat. Ashtat, her husband was Asar, and they were the one of the set of twins from Kibab or Sebab or Keb, some say, and Natat or Nut. Yeah, so that was their novel fight. Yeah, they were part of the 9, as it was referenced earlier, Sabthetu or Enneads. Now, it says she was jealous of her grandfather. We get Ray, it says Ra, and then say Ra, pronounced as Ray. We mentioned that earlier. Yep. The wisest and most practiced of the gods in the way of magic. With time, he had become old and weakly. Yeah, so the Most High, Ray, get old and weak. So it's a position, but it's also obviously this individual person. Isis watched him, thinking of ways in which she might learn the secret of his power, for he would never give it up of his own free will. So obviously in our understanding of this, Ray was a man, and even at that particular time, women were cut off. In this particular instance, women were cut off from certain powers or secrets or whatever. So in her view, she sought then to, well, I'm a woman, why can't I have the same power? And she sought to manipulate the situation to get some of this power. So it says, then she noticed that saliva dribbled from his lip and so decided on a plan of action. Secretly, she collected some of this liquid and mixed it in her hand with the earth upon which Ray had walked. From the clay, she fashioned a serpent, then using her magic, she transformed it into an arrow. When her task was completed, she took the arrow and voicing words of power. She secreted it at a roads where she knew Ray would walk past, the following day as dawn broke. Ray, accompanied other gods, walked his familiar road from horizon to horizon, eventually coming to the crossroads, and the hidden magical arrow, sensing the great god's presence, the arrow suddenly sprung to life and plunged its serpent fang deep into his leg. Ray fell to the ground in pain and agony as the poison spread throughout his body. The other gods gathered around helpless, for it was beyond their understanding that the great and all-powerful Ray could be so afflicted. He was the father of the gods. He had created all things, and they could not comprehend how anything of his own making would harm him. After a time, Ray summoned the strength to beckon one of them to his side. Then, speaking in a barely audible whisper, he told them he feared for his life, aiding he had no idea what power caused his distress. He begged that the gods of magic should be summoned to restore him to health. None of these gods knew how to help their god. Whichever way they tried, they could not help Ray. Then came Isis, who immediately went up to Ray's side and whispered into his ear that she could free him from the magic, if only he would reveal his true name, and we talked about names earlier, his tone, to her, thereby giving her the secret of his magical power. Initially, Ray tried to trick Isis by giving her titles and listing his achievements and honors rather than his name. He said his name was the creator of the heavens above and the earth below. He said he was the one that made the waters flow and caused air to move. He was the Lord of the horizon, of dawn and dusk, father of the gods and master of the Niles, the origin of time. He was the Khepre in the morning, Ray at noon, and Atum in the evening. However, Isis retaliated by telling him that he delayed his cure, for without his true name, there was nothing she can do to help him. Thus, she revealed his name to her. After much thought, Ra agreed under the condition that she would only reveal it to her son Ha, Heru, Horus, and that he should likewise keep it to himself until the end of time. Upon giving her magical formula and the poison began to leave from his painful body, soon he was restored to health. Once she learned the secret name of Father Ray, she became the most powerful of all deities, and she had knowledge of all things. So, Ashtat, Isis obviously has tricked Ray into giving the secret name and then thus access to the powers that he had. But the point that we want to focus on here is that she would only reveal it. So they agreed under the conditions, yes? That she would only reveal it to who? Ha, Heru, Horus, now today, Hara. Yeah, and that he, so she would keep it to the end of time, but then he would keep it until the end of time also, yeah? So let's see now. Let's move on. So this is the one of the master's introductions, which is in some of the books like Luciferian Conspiracy. It talks to you about his spiritual journey and his qualifications of why he considers himself that the person to be able to teach us in his day and time and what his purpose is. Now, listen to this. It says, I stepped onto the White Lodge of Freemasonry from the Black Egyptian mystery as Tahuti Thoth, called Hermes thrice times great, the possessor of the master's key and keeper of the secret word to become Haru, Horus. So somebody who is a Haru, a Horus is what? The keeper of the secret word. Yes? A companion of the Hierophant Imhotep, the scribe of the secret doctrine, conferrer of the 720 degrees in the secret number 9, and the guardian of the 9th gate, raising from the 9th chamber the secret, which will give you the power to realign yourselves. I was there, which was here, when the word "let there be light" was uttered. I have stood the test of time. I have been questioned by scholars and historians of all religions and denominations. I am capable of answering the unanswered and solving the problems of the world, yet my personal interest is in each and every one of you. So this Haru, keeper of the what? Secret word. So we've just read it about in actual facts number 18, cut off, and then we see in this story that Ray, who maintained or had this power, now gave it to the woman, a female. She has now become powerful and has passed it on to her son, Hurrah. Understood? Yeah, she's equivalent to the Europeans, well, Jesus, so to speak, but a different story, copied across. So here, when we come down into Earth, I'm just going to look at this for a moment and just tie up what we were just looking at there. We see that our ancestors placed the Murazaku, who became known as Parnatharu. Their proper name is Murazaku. They're the Riskians, which means providers. They became known as Natharu, where they get the English word nature from, became known as overseers. Now they placed the germ seed into the Indian Ocean, and as you can see here, came up in the Akawango swamp, and this gave birth to the Sands people over time, in terms of this project. Now, we split off, as we can see here, we're going to go into 2 strands. Understood? One strand of us made our way over into the Americas, and different interventions at certain times by extraterrestrials has led to the evolvement, let's say, of not only different races and sub-races, but also the development of our 9 different species in that regard. So we ended up here in the Americas, and here we can see in West Africa. Yeah, we've ended up here in West Africa as the original Egyptians, yeah, influenced by these Natharu from Orion and Cyrus, understood. So the reason how certain human beings have ended up in different parts of the planet is because they have been moved there. Yeah, and their genes interfered with and developed by various different extraterrestrials at certain points in time. And then at some points we have migrated to different places as a result of that. There is no story of, okay, well, white people were originally in Africa and then they migrated to these cold areas and they became white because it was cold. So how do you explain killer whales? How do you explain penguins? Why are they in those environments with a black top? When you see white in nature, it's to do with recessive genes. Yeah, recessive gene traits. Don't believe me? Check it out. As we said before in this class, Nagaru or blacks who have more skin layers than any other race on the planet, you are better to withstand cold conditions. We don't like the cold, but we're better equipped to withstand cold conditions than, as I say, other races out there. Yeah, go and try and drink some ginger tea when it's cold in the morning and walk out there. You'll be able to walk out there in a t-shirt, no problem. Yeah, we don't like the cold with some people, but cold burns as well as heat. Yeah, so let's stop all these myths, these migration theories about where they're cold, because we look up certain animals and see whether they're cold. When they've gone through a transition is because recessive genes. Look up white tigers. Maybe when we show our old video, maybe we'll pull it out next time and show you all about what they describe as white tigers, which are always oftentimes, isn't it, the one that everybody wants to see. You know what I mean? But look at what it is in nature. Because of the lack of knowledge of who we are as a species and who we are as human beings, we don't see, well, that's the albino, or that's the albino of the race, when we're looking at those things. But here, as I say, we see a migration of different interventions by different extraterrestrials of how you've got such a diverse genome here on the planet Earth. So the three major races now in this cycle obviously is the Nagaru, Negroid, we've got the Mongoloid, and then obviously you've got the Caucasoid. You understand? In terms of the main three races, and various different mixtures or interactions between those that have produced various different sub-races. You understand? So in this regard, so we can see the different extraterrestrial involvements or interceptions within the genome that have led to the development. In the case of the Caucasians, we can see here, as I say, Draconians in their genome, as well as Pleiadians. Understood, yeah, in that regard. And us here as the original Egyptians, who this table is going to show, produced the kind of West Africans. Now, here is an interesting thing. So we talked about, how we're going to connect them with our higher ancestors, because they locked off Sirius C, they cut themselves off, but obviously wanted to leave a pathway back for us to be able to reconnect, or get to those higher abodes without affecting them on the higher abodes where they were, or adversely affecting them in the higher abodes they were on. So here, out of my brother the extraterrestrial says, so in fact, are you saying negroids are the ancient Egyptians? Answer, yes, that is an actual fact. It is encoded in your 24,000 DNA strand genomes of your genes and chromosomes. We implanted it as the demi-deity Horus Hiru, which is Hara. So it's included and it's called by you, or will be, Ha-1, unique to humanoids, isn't it? Human accelerated region, Ha-1. So that pathway to connect us back, as we read in the story with Isis, isn't it, who then passed on, the secret word or tone to Ray, to connect them back. We find now as Ha-1, on the 20th chromosome, as we many times in this class, this extended version of it, which was gifted to us by Parnatharu to connect us back with our ancestors, which allows us as well to be part of that dimensional shift that we were mentioning earlier. The planet's going through certain transitions, but it has a counterpart. Is it? The planet Earth has a counterpart in a higher dimension, a twin planet, which we, at certain points in that 24,000 year cycle, we were able to jump when times got beyond repair on this planet, be able to jump between our counter worlds by using Ha-1, on the 20th chromosome. Understood? And it's why, as I say, human beings have accelerated in intellect over and above the animal kingdom, because of the genes placed in there by the Parnatharu. This was gifted to Nagarus only, but through mixing now, other races also have Ha-1, on the 20th chromosome. And as you can see there from that same book, Is Going Extraterrestrial, this same thing here through the extraterrestrial lines, extraterrestrials from Sirius and Ashtar, obviously from Orion, and then they produced or left this Hara, who was the first demi-deity, the first hybrid, of what would be considered to be mortal and these extraterrestrials. Understood? So Ha to us, we are all Ha, or all that Jesus, because Ha-Ru, the Ru at the end of it is what? It's a plural, correct? In the Semitic language. Ha-Ru is a people. But somebody has to come and teach you or give you that tone You know what I mean? That secret tone to unlock one's powers in the various different forms it may come in. Hence why you have the master teacher, who is claiming that. No one else is claiming that. Everybody's saying, I'm the chosen this, I'm the chosen that. But somebody's giving you certain titles within the story. We're just ignorant of the story. They know who he is. That's who they're looking for, the person with the tone. Yeah, J. Edgar Hoover, and that's who they're looking for. Who's got that tone? Who's going to bring in that new cycle? It's all there in our stories that they told you to stay away from. Isn't it? They told you to stay away from Egypt while they dig up all the bones and are studying it every day. They told you to stay away from there. And now today, Egypt's a thing of the black conscious community. Yeah, the black people, who's black and who's white, who's black or who's not black in the ancient Egyptians. I mean, that's all nice and good or whatever. What about this real deal stuff we're talking about now? I mean, the other 90% brain capacity that we use, but it's not activated. We use all of our brain, but there's a lot of our brain which is not activated. It's not switched on. In order to find that, I need to know about it first. Someone's got to teach you who is from those higher beings or higher ancestors. But they're not allowing you to come back up there with the mind state that we're in at the moment. Hence why we have to clean ourselves inside out and outside in. Yeah, with all the games that have been played, and the Mukasu as the chief force, the Caucasian for the last 6,000 years of just blocking our progress. And for Ha1, the 24 abilities or tests that we were supposed to achieve in the last cycle as a result of having the genes of our ancestors, from time travel, you understand, to curing all diseases, certain things that we were supposed to achieve, these 24 points. How much have we achieved? Almost nothing. Because of who's been in our way. Yeah, and most of the time we didn't even realize we was in a fight. Or we don't know even who the enemy is. We think it's ourselves. All the time. And this is the part of the problem that we're facing today, to really get beneath, what the real stuff is, to find out, say, what is connected to the who as opposed to the what. Understood. Now, I've gone on too long. I've gone on too much. We're better at managing my time. Now, we're about halfway through this of what I wanted to kind of cover today. So what I can do, I can stop there. And to be fair to everybody, I don't want to not do the rest. I think it's fair for us to go through. So if people were minded, what I'd do, I'd just do a one-off for part 2 of this next Sunday, same time, so that we can make sure we do it justice, because there's some other stuff that we need to do with this matriarch bit. I want to go into some of the science of sex and how it's being messed around. There's kind of this fake feminism that's coming out versus what is the actual sacred feminine thing that should be aspiration to, and how they're targeting the youth. We need to go into that in some detail connected to the stories that we just mentioned there with Asset and Haru, etc. So I know there's a certain amount of people on the call. If you want me to do a part 2, I'm happy to do that this time next Sunday. So I'll be happy to do that. If there's a vote for it, then I'll do that. If not, we'll come out in questions. So I don't know. I want to take a vote on that at the moment. So I don't know. I think you're the host, aren't you? So I need to change it back. Let's see.
Can I pose a question?
You can indeed pose a question.
Not a lot of question, the solution. I would like those on the chat now, if they wanted to have a class next week, Sunday, and just to cover the second part of the rebirth of Black Egypt and the Matriarch. If you could all click yes on their keypads or the letter Y, and then we'd be able to gauge from there.
Cool.
Yeah, we've got some Y's coming in. Tua, yes. That's it. There's more coming in. Somebody typed a 6. We're saying Y.
Yeah.
It's looking like the majority of people attendees are wanting the part 2 on Sunday.
All right, what I'll do, I'll do part 2. I suppose what you can do in terms of a little bit of background to help you so you don't forget everything I've kind of been saying today. Look up mitochondrial DNA or mitochondrial DNA, and you can look up that story of Ray and Isis. So have that in your head for next time in terms of the last 2 things at least. And then we are going to go into detail on the matriarch side and the kind of hows and whys and why we are a matriarchal society versus patriarchal. And then we're going to go into, as I say, some detail around the Egyptian, one of our ancestors by name of who they call Hatshepsut, and why she's important to who and what we are right now. So not to be missed next week, not to be missed. So we're going into some deep understanding of, not so deep understanding, but we're going to understand about gender, because that's a very controversial subject now. You know what I mean? If you say the wrong thing, you lose your job. So we need to cover that in some detail so you can have the facts to mash up anybody who tries to come at you with any of that stuff, because and then how that ties into the Dendora star map. So we're going to go into that in some detail, equip you with the relevant information to understand about gender, what's going on now with the youth, and how we need to say protect those youth, and think about a generational plan that the changes we make now, may not manifest themselves for another 400 years. So it's not just about your own transformation. That's a bit of a selfish attitude. We have to not only do our transformation, we have to think about the race and how we're not only changing ourselves, but affecting the development of the youth. So they then give birth to a next higher level of youth. They then give next birth to a higher level of youth. By the time you get that to 4 generations, you're getting that transformation coming through. Okay. I
do have a final question.
Okay. Yeah.
It says, this is from Second Tat. Did Anatharu collapse the star because it was a gateway?
Yes, but there's another gateway. So it was a gateway to them. Yes, a gateway to those higher abodes of existence. Yeah. So it's an interesting approach, and shows you their mindset as well. I think we touched on in last class as well. When they were dealing with certain things in relation to the Anunnaki, it's a no-nonsense approach. Yeah, I think as in Matriarch Risk, to talk about them being kind but firm. It's a completely different mindset to what we would understand. But we are their children, and they've continually looked out for our interests in that they don't feel that way in the shadowy world that we live in today. But that's why I call it a great and dreadful day. So it's great for some and dreadful for others. So obviously we've got to prepare for our transformation, which this class is helping you to do that. Anything else before we close out today? If you're a Sabian, so it's a big family meeting on today, so if you haven't registered for that, register for that before. I think it's 4 p.m. EST time, which is I think 9 o'clock UK time. Not I think I know it's 9 o'clock UK time. So 5 hours ahead, so you must register in advance for that meeting if you want to attend that. Okay, so nothing else. Then Sunday at the same time, 1 o'clock, one thing. So what I'll do is, I think I'm best to do that. So what I'll do, I'll put it on that Facebook page. I don't know if there's a way in the system to email everybody because I don't keep the thing, but I'll see if we can do that. I'll maybe pull out, and if not, I'll email those who have been on the call today. Can get a direct registration link, so you need to just register for that class as a one-off, and then it will now send you the details to register into that class. Or, as I say, I'll post it here as well under the events section on the main page, and in all the other forums that we're in, so nobody doesn't miss out. If you for some reason you don't get it, or you're trying to find out where it is, then let's just see it. All eyes on Egypt. So yeah, you've got our email address, so that should be out midweek. If you don't, for some reason you haven't received it, then just email us on the address that's shown in your invitation email, and obviously we can then send it back out to you. But I say you should get it via those sources. Okay, well, thank you, everybody. Hopefully, so it's been interesting for you today, and if you would kindly join us next week, I think it will be to your benefit, and we'll pick it up next Sunday, same time. Okay, if there's nothing else, bid everybody a peaceful week, or strong, depending on how you want to look at it, and we'll see you next Sunday, same time. Take care. Wadu.
Wadu.